Oh, good.
I'm not an expert. That is not exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm being optimistic.
Ready to go?
What programme do you want?
Okay, thank you everybody for coming. We're starting a couple of minutes late. I happen to know that Alan Lloyd-Smith said he may be slightly delayed because he was in London, as David was, and David's managed to get down here quicker, if you were on the same train, or not. Anyway, we will get going anyhow, and if Alan comes, then jolly good. So, first item, apologies and reasons for absence. Before I say that, here he is. We will do it again. Let me apologise to people for my cold and my coughing if I start, but I'll hope not to do it too much. So, welcome, Alan. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. We were only just about 10 seconds in when you walked in. So we start again at the beginning. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Community Warden Joe Voss. I think basically it's Valentine's Day.
Oh no!
Oh, that's sweet.
Yes. And our PCSO, he was intending to come, but he's got to be somewhere else at 7 o'clock. So just before I came out, he sent his apologies.
Okay.
But I do have a quick few
Notes.
which I'll bring up later. Yeah.
Okay, and everyone here on the council is present and correct. Declaration by members of any interest, pecuniary or other, on anything on the agenda.
No.
No one got anything to declare, thank you. So we don't have any applications. I need to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded. That's recorded here with 2 C's, but you'll correct that.
Sorry. Oh, yes. Good
So at this point, I'm going to adjourn the meeting for the public session. Before I hand over to people who want to say things, let me just mention we've got a very full agenda tonight, and so what I want to do is to try and make sure that the public session goes through in an expeditious manner, not a non-existent manner, but an expeditious manner, and then we'll move back onto the agenda, which, as I say, is full and I hope fruitful. So, public session, we've got a planning application or two planning applications to talk about. So if I start with them, as we usually do, the first one is the barn at Hunts Hill Farm. Who wants to talk about that?
Oh.
Hi, hello Billy Joe.
Hi.
What would you like to say?
Basically, I'd just like to say that Mr. Mason started the works without applying for permission to do so. A few months ago, Anthony was down there early one Saturday morning about 7:30, and the digger came down the bridle path and they started to proceed to move the soil, etc. And Anthony actually said, you know, I don't think you've got permission to stop the works. We contacted Ashborough Council on Monday, and they said they would investigate. And initially they said that he hadn't breached any conditions by starting the works, and then they did write back by email and said that actually he did need to have planning permission. But he's already put it in. The gate is already there. It's concreted in. It's just got the fence there, and obviously the big heap of soil is blocking the ditch outside of the along the bridle path. Yeah. So that's really all I wanted to say. Okay. Is that he had actually started the works prior to any planning application. Right. And also we've never known a driveway to be there, like ever. We've been there, as you know, 43 years, my family, and 3 of the neighbours that also live there. I've never known a third driveway. So you don't think that the thing it says on the planning application is reopening a previous access? You're doubtful? I don't believe that to be true, no. And nor do the neighbours that have also lived there over 25 years. Right. 3 other neighbours down the Bridle Path. And we suggest that perhaps the one photo that he did submit to Ashborough Council was actually one of the other 2 existing driveways, because he already has 2 existing driveways. So we think it's perhaps one of them. Okay. Right. I don't think the applicant is here. And any written representations? No. So who would like to start off on... Oh no, we're going to do that later. Sorry, ignore that. I shall now 3 steps backwards. Who wants to talk about 12 Swan Cottages, if anything? Oh, I should say, does anyone want to ask questions of Billy Joe?
Well, I would like to ask a question. Do we know who owns Rugden Lane?
Yes, we do. Ashford Borough Council actually asked Mr Mason to write and ask permission because he hadn't wrote to the owner of the bridal park. Is that correct? That's correct. And we have to ask permission, and it's Mr. Sorry, I didn't know this was coming up tonight. It was a very late minute, but he did ask.
Is it Mr. Van Dorp?
Yes.
He still owns it, does he?
Well,
Yes,
apparently
he did
so,
actually
yes,
provide
yes.
to ask permission for it.
Well, I thought that's what I picked up from that. But I'm a bit surprised if he still owns it. Anyway, you can say he does, he does.
None of us have ever known who owned it until
No, I remember him well. I do remember him well.
Can you just remind me, is the property that is that the one, is that the Scandinavian?
Yes.
And is that the one that's on the market at the moment
Actually,
as
he's
one
got-
property and as two properties?
Yes, that's right. I've met two potential buyers
Okay.
down there today.
And is this new access impacting on one or both of the new properties?
Yes, it's to have access to the Black Barn.
The barn, the barn that was.
The one who now sell off.
So this is partially dividing off the driveways into both, so each property
It will have their own drive. Yes. Yes, because they're both on the market. So
Are they
it's,
both independent properties?
they're both owned by Mr
I know
Mason.
they're both owned, but they're now both completely
They
independent.
got
Yes.
split in March by Ashford.
Yes.
Because they originally were. Oh, okay.
Yes, that's when they did.
The agreement that they were one was ancillary to the other has been quashed by Ashford in March, which was a point that David made with great strength at the planning committee, which I think must have caused a certain amount of egg on face.
Yeah, well, it nearly went against us as well.
Maybe of a different drive. Okay, right. Anyone else want any questions of Billy Joe? No? Okay, thank you. We'll come to that when we go back to our meeting then. Does anyone want to talk about 12 Swan Cottages from the public? That's the front and side extension to form an annex. No? Okay, we'll get to that when we come to it on our agenda. Okay, other items that the public wish to raise, please? Miriam.
Yeah, okay. First point is, have we made any progress, please, on the sign for the village green? We do want to, as you know, as I said at the last meeting, move forward with this. We can't do anything until Ashford Borough Council give us permission to put the sign on their land.
I said I would keep in touch with you. I haven't got any further from already saying that KCC have okayed it, Ashford Borough Council Legal have okayed it, Ashford Borough Planning have okayed it. You wanted further.
Well, I mean, the point is we need permission. What they've said, it doesn't need planning permission, that's one thing. But we actually need the permission of Ashford Borough Council to put, the council have said that they can't give that permission, the Parish Council, because they just hold a lease on the land.
Yes.
That we need Ashford Borough Councils, and I think that we did suggest that Councillor Burgess might be able to take that forward for us, because the notes that I've been handed over by Mavis King certainly show that Councillor Burgess did manage to get that undertaking out of Ashford Borough Council some years ago, that a sign could go on the land. So we just really need whoever it is in authority, Ashford Borough Council, to say, yes, you can do it, and we can go ahead and get it done. It'd be really nice.
Yeah, well, one is passing on. I did chase it after them. Then
But,
there she's saying,
our ward member
somebody
wasn't
else.
here at the last meeting, so perhaps we could ask that he takes that up on our behalf to see if we can get the person who has the authority to say, yes, it can go on council land. I don't know if it's housing, it's housing land.
it's borough, it's housing that I went to, and they were passing on to legal. So she said.
Okay,
You said legal's given an okay, didn't you?
Well, from a separate way of going about it, yes.
So
it is housing land, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I went to.
So can we ask you to go and see if you can put a ferret up the drain
Do you
pipe and see
know
what happens?
Who in housing Mum contacted? Who did you contact in housing?
No, I'm the one that's doing it all.
Right. Could you remember?
I can't, and I can't trace the. I had a reply from her, and it's lost in the. I've got to go into it a different way, but I will have another go and see if I can find it. But I will let you.
I don't know whether Giles Holloway has anything to see. He's the one that
Yes.
stuff, doesn't he? But
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not him.
He's a
a few inquiries.
Yes, it's not.
Okay, we'll see what we can do to make. I understand the desire to get moving on it, or keep moving on it, and obviously, well, yeah, it would be. Yeah, we all agree it would be nice. We've just got to wait for the people. We've just got to wait for the people who have the power to give us the approval. Okay, that's fine. Sure. Okay. Well, we'll do that. And next item.
Right. Okay. Well, sort of thank you to the clerk for giving me this statement on Wittersham Sports Club. It's not entirely clear to me from this, to be honest, what the parish council's position is, but I think we can leave that for now, except to say that I find that if the parish council is making comments about a village organisation like the sports club, it would be courteous, I think, to actually approach that organisation and ask if they have any comments and any views. I mean, nobody from the sports club asked you for your opinion, but you decided to give it anyway. I always think that it is better if you engage with people instead of making statements about a village organisation, and indeed private land, which is neither owned by the sports club or the parish council. It is private land. The sports club have a lease on that land, and as the parish council know, that lease doesn't have too much longer to run. But nevertheless, we do have a lease. I think it would have been appropriate to have approached the organisation first. But that aside, councils will probably aware that things are progressing, shall we say. They might or might not be aware that Ashford Borough Council have now said that if the social club were to reopen, they would take enforcement action, because the building only has planning permission for use as a sports pavilion. No other use, a sports pavilion. The licence which is there, which I've explained to the parish council, I think 2 or 3 times now, belongs to the football club, and they've had it for 21 years. It's only used in association with a sports pavilion. No other use. We can only use it when the building is being used as a sports pavilion. If it's going to be used in a wider capacity of a drinking establishment, that would need planning permission. So if the social club were to start again, Ashford have clearly said that would not be acceptable and that they would take enforcement action. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you couldn't go through a planning process. Of course, if that was the will of the sports club and the owner was content with that, that would be another matter. But as it stands at the moment, that is the situation. So I think the parish council should be aware of that.
Fine. Okay, let's leave it at that point, Miriam. Thank you for telling us that. That is all news to us, and in a way, that's not really an issue for us. It's an issue for the sports club. You did, just before going off of this, because it's not on our agenda tonight, but you did say, why were we dealing with it without asking the sports club? The reason we were dealing with it was because I wanted, and as you know, it's written in the paper, and the council agreed with me, that we ought to put down on paper exactly what our position was after the time in November meeting, when we had this slightly confused set of exchanges in the public session about whether the social club was, or the sports club, whatever you want to call it, was anything to do with us. And I wanted to make it clear that there were areas where the council had previously established a position, and they're listed in that paper. That's all it was. It was nothing. It was nothing to do with the sports club directly. It was the council putting on a piece of paper what its own established position was. Right, so and on that basis, it did not need anything else.
If it's nothing to do with Wittersham Sports Club, why do you head the paper Wittersham Sports Club? You may as well go around every private field in the village and head it, you know.
If we needed to, Miriam, perhaps you're right. But these are silly debating points, to be honest. The fact is that it is about Wittersham Sports Club, but it was the council's position. It was not to do with having a discussion with the sports club about what the council's position was.
So what
Okay,
I'm saying,
so there we
my
are.
point was then that when you're
Okay, let's
formulating a
leave it.
position,
Let's
when
leave
you're
it.
trying to formulate
Let
a
us leave it
position,
there, Miriam. We need to move on to other things. We've got a big agenda. The sports
Well, I
club
mean,
is
it's
the
a
sports
simple
club
question.
is not on it. Are there other items that people want to raise? Yourself included, of course.
Well, I would like to have finished my point, but
No, I think you've made a point which we understand, but ultimately that one is for others. It's for the sports club to take account of what the local authority thinks concerning their lease and their premises. And of course, I know you're a member of it.
Well, just a minute. So you put, and I don't really understand the point there. So you're saying this document has nothing to do with the sports club?
I didn't say that. I
It's
said
a
that.
document
I said that you were making silly debating points, and I stand silly debating points about how you can't possibly have something that says Wittersham Sports Club and it's nothing to do with the sports club and this and that. It was a statement of the council's position. That is a matter for the council, not the sports club.
Yeah,
And that's
all
it.
that my point was that if you're going to
That's
have a
enough,
position
Miriam.
on an
That's enough,
organisation,
Miriam.
well,
I
that's
want
the
to move on.
organisation.
Does anyone else want to raise any other points, or Miriam? Otherwise, I'm closing the public session. No? Thank you very much. Public session is closed. Let us go back to the agenda now. Thank you very much. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of January 2017. We've all had them. Does anyone have any concerns? Are there any corrections or suggestions of errors first? No? Can I sign the minutes then as being a proper record?
Yes.
Thank you. Everyone agreed? Yeah.
You can do it at the top, please, because they're the bits that
And
sort
sign.
of sign. This is just the appendix, so it's not official.
Okay.
And, sorry, I'm to throw it at you.
That's all right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good. So that's the minutes. Now, matters arising, the clerk's report.
I don't have a report. I've just got down the community litter pick as to sort of any more details that you've got on that, please.
Yeah, so the community litter pick, excuse me, is organised for the 11th of March. I've submitted a risk assessment to Ashford Borough Council, which they've acknowledged. They've asked for a second copy, so I've got to get a second copy off to them because I didn't initial in every box I needed to initial. So I've got that sorted. They are delivering high-vis jackets, gloves, litter pickers and black sacks to my house. The meeting point will be, we'll run it from the front of our drive, so we don't infringe on anything that's going on in the village hall. But the Ashford Borough Council have agreed to everything that we're planning to do on the day. I've got posters here to give to you and some to distribute to the various, the shop, the pub, etc. tomorrow. And we've got all of the detail needed to organise the day sorted. So that's all
I might have just missed what you said there. Are Ashford bringing the kit over here, or are you going to get it? They're bringing it here.
They're bringing it here.
Right.
They're also sending an additional pickup truck on the Monday the 13th of March, to collect the rubbish
From you?
from our driveway.
So the plan is, depending on how much people pick up, that if they, for argument's sake, pick up a bag part way along their route, they'll come back to your house and drop it and go and do another bit.
Yeah,
Right.
so it needs to be sent to my house.
And have you've got a map or something where you're going to be able to brief what everyone does, are you?
I have, yeah.
Right.
I didn't. Do you want to see it or?
No, but you've got what you
I've
need.
had to submit that to Ashford Borough and they've council with details of the roads we're picking up on. We're only picking up on streets where there's a 30-mile radius.
30-mile-an-hour limit.
Yeah. 30 mile an hour. Yeah, not 30 mile radius. That'll be a challenge. And yeah, I've organised it so people don't actually, on the main main road, so Swan Street, Poplar Road and the street won't have to cross the road. You do one side or you do the other.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all organised.
Good.
And there's another advert going in the March Oxney.
Yeah, I saw that.
I submitted that yesterday.
Yeah, saw that. Good. Okay, well this will be, it's not a new departure, but it's a renewed departure. I mean, we've done it before, I gather, before my time. You
Well,
probably
no,
remember.
we did it outside the 30 mile.
Oh, right.
Ah,
well.
You keep the kid.
Health and safety doesn't allow that now.
Previously, when I've been involved in some other borough councils, we have kept the kit because we've repeated the exercise. Whether or not that happened this time or not, I don't know.
We'll caretake it.
But we're looking after it somewhere.
That's a special prize for the person who gets the most sacks.
Yeah, there you are.
Oh.
Challenge.
Being allowed to go home.
Then people start donating their own
I think it's
dustbins.
very
So,
generous.
I'll just go
I think it's
round
very
mine.
generous of
All of the village's
about-
rubbish ends up on our drive.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Other things then? No?
No, that was all right.
The only other
That's
thing
all
I
right.
had, which is not quite a matter of rising, except that it is flowing from last time, if anyone looked at it, and Yvonne spotted it, I sort of looked at it and never quite got to the bottom until Yvonne pointed it out. Ashford managed to put out the full table of all the parish council precepts yesterday, or the day before, Friday, and there was a mistake in all of the percentage increases. Everyone's got a mistake in them. So they said ours was 12%, and we actually said it would be 8. The precept is right. They've now issued it again today, and it says 8. So it's the right amount of money. They've now got the right increase of 8%. I was a bit panicked when I first saw the 12 and made sure it was still within the 7p, which I put 7p a week in Outlook. It is actually about 6 point tiny bit, but I rounded it up to be safe. So that has come in following last month's decision on the precept. Nothing else arising then? No? Good. Okay, we now get to the planning applications that we talked about a moment ago in the public session. Now, one thing for me to say first, this was my fault. When the one came around about the, we'll do Hunts Hill Farm first. The
We've
barn,
got
the
to call
barn,
it.
the
It's
barn
the barn
of Hunts Hill Farm.
because
yeah.
Hunts Hill Barn
Farm
is something
it's a
entirely
different
different.
No, I said Hunts Hill Farm, but this
Yes,
is the
but
barn of
barn.
Hunts Hill Farm.
Barn Hunts
Let
Hill
alone
Farm.
Hunts Hill Barn.
Yes.
There are more Hunts Hills than anything. This is the barn of Hunts Hill Farm, where Billy Joe has already told us about the work going on in advance. Who wants to start off on that?
I have got photos. Some of you have seen them of what it is like at the moment and where it's going. If you've already.
I think the history of it is the important aspect of it, because I think just if you look at it coldly as an application to put a pipe in a ditch and put some earth over it, I
Big
can see a
deal.
problem with that. But if it's actually creating a new access, which I'm not sure is with sight lines and things like that are adequate, I think that puts a different slant on it.
Okay, right. Thanks, George.
I'm just really concerned about the way that this president goes about making things happen, getting things to happen.
Yes,
You know,
this is a serial offender.
it's a retrospective again,
Yeah.
and I just feel really uncomfortable with this.
It's not only retrospective. I'm pretty sure that in the documents it says the work has not started,
Yes, indeed.
and it also says that it's reopening an old access, which it may be old enough, but it's not within the last 20 years, according to what we're told. Was it 20?
Isn't there a principle that if somebody has, how to put it, flouted the planning regulations, that they should be punished
Yeah.
for next time round? I mean, I'm not sure
They
whether
never
that's a
are.
principle that exists.
Yeah.
And it probably, in fact, shouldn't. I mean, we got away with it last time, and
Yeah.
that's regrettable. But in fact, I don't see. I've been up there to have a look.
Mm.
I live quite close by, and I mean, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't go onto the path of Rugden, really, particularly if it's.
Sure. I think the consensus is emerging that in ordinary circumstances it's not a big deal. It's not even clear from the Billy Joe's statement earlier that it's a particular problem work to be done, except that this is a person who has been a serial offender, having been turned down in the 80s or 90s or something for converting the barn into a hobbies room, turned down and promptly turned it into a bungalow, got retrospective permission, then later on asked to sever it from the main house.
It could be
while always
going back to Sweden.
Should be a lot of things, yeah. Oh, it's up for sale. It's up for sale.
So, it's not likely to happen again.
And now it's just another. It's not only, what I'm trying to say is, it's not only a retrospective application on what we're told and what we can see. It's a retrospective application claiming to be an application in advance.
I think what's gone on in the past is important. However, on its merits, which is what the planning office probably look at. First of all, your point about retrospective and what have you, if you put up a house without planning permission, then I'm sure Ashford Borough Council would take a pretty dim view of it.
Well, this one did, and he got it.
Well, yeah, but this is we all go and put these things in.
Yeah,
what
sure.
have you. We, in fact, excuse me, one has come in today, not in for this meeting, but just onto the planning site, which is down in Acton Lane, which is a new entrance and a garage, etc., which is going through the correct process. So
And on
we
its
either
merits
support
is
the
fine.
correct process or we don't. The other thing that concerns me is that, so clearly there's a little bit of so we say ambiguity on the part of the applicant, compounded by past history, and one would hope that Ashford Borough Council Planning Department would take the correct view. The other point that you mentioned is that if this is a road that's owned, or if that throughway is owned by this gentleman you mentioned, I can't remember his name.
Abraham Van Dor.
Yeah, presumably he should have been consulted in this.
He has been notified.
He has, I think.
Yes, because if you go on what happens here,
I can't think which land we still own up. I thought it had all been passed into other hands.
well, whether it's still there or not is, I mean, this is a very poorly. It doesn't give a full.
Because they have returned quite a lot of the land that used to belong to Harry Aspinall, and then
Right.
maybe it's just that's an odd thing.
Has the development, has the application been signed off by a third-party professional? Is he seeking? Is he doing it himself, or is he
Yes.
represented?
No.
He's not represented. Okay, so basically he signed something that we think could well be untrue.
Yes.
And therefore we have a duty of care to bring that
I think we can draw attention to that.
attention and say, are you allowing this precedent?
Yes, it is just his own application.
It's actually got a tick somewhere that says, has the work been started?
Has the building work or change of use already started? No.
So can I suggest, just to draw it to a conclusion, if people agree that we may wish to give our whatever we call it.
First of all, we can't support it.
No. Well, what I was going to say was, that was the word I was trying to think of. We would support the application on its pure merits, but we should draw attention of the planning department to the fact that firstly, the work was started earlier and stopped, although the planning application suggests it has not been, and secondly, the submissions at the parish council meeting from a neighbour was that there had not been an entrance on that site for at least 20 years. We could say that if we want to.
I'm not sure that that's strictly appropriate in the sense
How
that
would we do it then?
Well, to say we would support something on its own merits, I wouldn't.
Okay,
be
you don't think we go
comfortable with
that far?
because I don't. On the merits that I'm observing,
Okay, all right,
I wouldn't
if that's
support
gone too
it.
far, we wouldn't.
I think we have to say that
Okay.
information has been brought to our attention,
Right.
and until we are satisfied that the planning application is true.
Then,
legal,
until then we can't support it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
Okay.
Rugden Lane is in such a shocking mess, and has been for many decades. I mean, do we have a facility to attach a condition? And I'm only thinking naturally And could it be said
We don't have any ability to attach anything.
We can't recommend that
Nice dual carriageway
he
again.
can have his access provided he restores Rugden Lane to something
Well,
livable.
that's
I don't think even Ashford could do that, and we certainly can't.
And it
Great
might
idea.
put him off.
Yeah,
Unlikely.
unlikely. Okay,
a good
so
idea.
you'll put some words together.
So
along
we're
those
saying
lines.
that we can't support it until the application is correct.
Yeah,
In fact, yeah.
and you have to say exactly what we think is incorrect, of course.
Yeah.
I think we did a spell
A and B.
There's a dispute over the facts.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Let's move on then to the Swan Cottages, and before we talk about that, this was what I was going to say was my fault. This came around with the document, which I then passed on very quickly to David that night at the weekend, and I didn't then come back to you with this because you'd probably passed it on again. What this says, which is on the website, the portal, the important part is it's saying that this is done so that the aged person who lives in the house can live in the annex, and the daughter and son-in-law, or vice versa, are going to move into the house to look after her, and that's the reason for wanting it. It doesn't add up to it doesn't add anything to the planning application, but it gives us a reason why it's sort of a sensible thing to do. Does anyone want to start us off? That can go back to you then.
Thank you. Could
on
I have just had comments because I sent the invite out.
Please read.
Yes, and one from Deborah Bullock, who is Mrs. Jenner's daughter. Thank you for the invite to the meeting. Unfortunately, we are unable to attend, so I've written a few comments if you don't mind reading them out. We would like to build this extension as my mother, Mrs. Jenner, needs to be cared for more and more. The main house is too small for us all to live in. Mum also has COPD and has to get up several times a night, and as the bathroom is downstairs, she's finding it increasingly difficult. Being in the extension, she would find it a lot easier to be on one level. She also suffers severe anxiety attacks by things going wrong with the house, which has not been maintained for many years. The main house needs some renovation, which we could do whilst living there, as well as looking after Mum, which would ease her worries. And I've had an email from Mr. Bidler, who lives next door, 12 number 13.
On the side it's being built, or the other side?
Right, the side it's being built, which he will tell you.
Okay.
Let me finish.
Good.
My apologies for not being able to attend the meeting. I would like to express my views via this email, if that is possible. I have no complaints about the plan to extend 12 Swan Cottages towards my property at 13 Swan Cottages as a single-storey building, although it might look a bit odd from my view, with the front part of that building standing higher than the rest of the building. I do have a concern, however, about the drainage for the new extension, as my property is on the lower side and already gets some runoff from the patio and outbuildings of number 12. I've had a conversation with the occupiers about this problem, and it was suggested that the new extension would be drained into a soakaway. This would not be acceptable. We are on wheeled clay, and the soakaway would have to be a great depth to have any effect at all. At best, may work for a year or so until it silts up. Talking as a retired Sportsfield drainage consultant, where I had to install soakaways quite often because of highways and of environmental reasons. Soakaways are a last resort. This is a major concern for me and my property. Excess water causes subsidence. I'm convinced it will be possible to connect to existing drainage. I'm hoping this can be achieved.
Depends what he means by existing drainage, I think. It'll be a question of what the surface water is doing in Swan Cottages. Ashford will know that, or they should do. There will be gully pots in the channel along the side of the road, which may indeed go into a surface water drainage system, or they may sort of head off in the direction of the nearest stream. But I don't know whether they'd allow him to go into them. I would think Swan Cottages are generally all on soakaways, and in fact the existing roof will probably be on soakaways. Okay, well, who wants to start on it? No? Alan, will you put your hand up? No?
I know the house well, and I know the occupants well, and
professionally.
Yes, well, although I'm yesterday's man by quite a long way. There's lots of merit in the concept, isn't there, in keeping an elderly person in the community and And you know, we're all going to end up in nursing homes unless we're careful, and that, you know, it helps to avoid that sort of thing. So I think there's merit in it myself from a social perspective, and it's quite a nice little design. I looked at it carefully and I thought it was quite pleasing. So
Fine.
For the reasons Alan has said, I'd like to support the application. I think it also brings another family into the village. It's good. But I do think that, you know, so what I would like to do is, if we were to support, is add comment that, you know, we would want to know that the drainage was going to be given.
We draw attention to it.
Yeah, and it didn't impact on neighbours.
So can I suggest then that anyone else want to speak?
No, I completely agree with David.
Can I suggest then that we're happy to support the principle of the building, but it has been drawn to our attention by the neighbour on that side that he's wary about the drainage off the roof, and doesn't feel a certain way would be sufficient, and therefore can we ask the ABC people to consider that carefully, which they may or may not. I suspect, to be frank, they'll just give it and it'll be on the soakaway because that'll be their principle. But he's whoever it is, the chap is absolutely right, even if he wasn't a specialist in the area, that there is a tendency for water to run downhill, strangely enough, and neighbours do often get it.
I think it is right, we should support it, but like you say, we should make that condition with Ashford Council.
I mean,
the responsibility at that stage.
The building regs people, of course, can always demand certain, you know, design and capability of the soakaway. But I suspect that, I mean, obviously the water that's presently landing on the garden that this is going to be built on, what does it do? It soaks away, or it runs off. Clay or what? That's what it does. You're not adding any more water, all you're doing is concentrating it.
I presume that's going to release another property at Woodland View then, because that's where the daughter and son-in-law are.
Oh, really?
Oh, right. I didn't...
Eventually.
Yeah.
And that's a rental, of course, I take it, in Woodland View, or most likely.
I think it's
Most likely rental. This will be owned by the parents. Okay, thank you very much.
Can I, at this point, bring in the application that Paul was talking about? This is at the Granary, Little Acton, down Acton Lane, general purpose store garage to replace existing and removal of existing access with new access created. It's coming today, which means, well, I hadn't actually got it. It's just been notified today. What I've done here is just to draw your attention to it. This is the granary, that's the... because I'm not in favour of holding another meeting, and it doesn't seem to impact on neighbours. And I wonder whether you would agree if I could send it round for comments on this one. And if you turn over, you will see it's what they've given is the sight lines as to.
And it's the way they've extended on the end there. And it's like a dark end.
See, at the moment it comes out.
Quite a lot there. The only property is going to be, I don't know if it could be seen from further down. But Little Acton is directly opposite. So they're going to have, well, excuse the pun, a view. And I couldn't work out from the application the height, because it was like a sort of an artist impression.
Yes, it didn't give many details, did it?
Did they not ask for planning permission for something?
Yes,
they've had an extension.
They had a games room or what have you, the other side of the property, about a year ago.
Yes.
And before that, they had the extension.
Yeah.
And so there's been, but what they've got at the moment is a pretty grotty old thing. But it's actually a change of access as well on there, and hence my comment reflecting the previous one. So,
but I just wonder whether if.
And it's one of those things that in the winter, as you go down there today, it's dead easy to see. Once all the leaves and the green, you wouldn't probably see it. But it is quite a big, the new garage, it's a 3-bay corrugated metal painted. You can see it on the site, so.
It's just that I think that highways are more likely, you know, that the
Yeah.
big issue is the
Sure.
sight lines,
Access.
and this is where highways will come in, and highways will have their say, and it's one of those things that we often say,
Yeah.
it's not down to us, it's down to highways. So,
Sightlines are dead straight down there.
What I
So,
was just questioning in my mind was that it's got the sort of orange and the purple. Am I right in thinking that the Pleasant access hasn't got very good visibility either? It may not be that the new one's very good, but nor was the old one.
I don't know, I haven't been down there.
Pretty straight down there. to be
It is
honest.
straight
I mean,
straight road.
you know,
When
whether
they've done
it-
those displays, though, it looks as though you have to look through the hedge, if I understand.
No,
It's the way the drawing.
It's
the way the drawing is.
It's the headline that actually creates
Yeah.
highways.
Okay.
Problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
the
the
plan is
question
to
is, are you
circulate.
happy for me to circulate it so you can all give your comments and
Yeah,
I will
fine.
then,
Yes.
otherwise it's a separate meeting because I can't ask them for an extension because it's too
No problem.
far away, if you know what I mean.
Okay,
Thank you.
so that is the planning. Grand. So we move on to the forward task list that I talked about last month briefly. First question is, apart from International Dark Sky Community that was raised last time, and I added it onto the list,
Thank you.
is there anything else that people have thought of since that we need to be looking ahead to over the next few months? No? Okay. So what I've done here in this sheet is just to give everyone a bit of an update, status report, whatever, as to where we've got to, and we have actually made some progress. So the first thing, looking for the small housing sites, I've spoken to Simon Cole, who's the plan writer at Ashford, and he's agreed to meet Yvonne and myself to discuss the way forward in March. We haven't got an actual date yet. That is really just following up before you guys joined. When I saw him at the Ashford Rural Conference back in the autumn, after the first draft of the ABC plan came out, then the plan said that Wittersham and lots of other villages could only build on infill sites within the village. I pointed out to him, as we had discussed at the council, that it wasn't clear that there were enough infill sites to meet the sort of numbers over the planned period of 15 years. And he said, well, if that is the case, and obviously evidence comes into it, if that's the case, then we ought to be discussing what we do about it. And this is just following through with that. He's still plugging away at his drafts. There's a meeting with a committee of Ashford Borough Council coming up later this month to consider where he is at that stage, and he says there's no point talking to you until I've got past that. You know, he's probably very busy. Once I've had that committee meeting, then I say committee loosely, it's some sort of working party. He will then know a bit better about where he is. The other thing that's happening, which I reported in the calc paper that we'll come to later, was the word I was hearing, I don't know how true, from other parishes who were plugged into this, that new population estimates, which I've mentioned at the parish council before, which I first heard from ONS at one of the conferences I went to, those population estimates forward have apparently demanded ABC to have something in the region of 800 to 1,000 houses more than they had in the first draft of the plan. And even that was on the basis that they weren't making their 5-year objective target either. So basically Ashford is really under the cosh on house numbers, and he's got to wait until he's had this discussion with them to know what on earth they're going to do. And then after that we should get a discussion with them. I said I hadn't turned it on at the beginning.
No comment.
It was because I didn't want you to be electrocuting yourself.
How thoughtful.
Remind me again, what's our target in Wittersham?
We haven't got one.
What was the suggested target?
We haven't got one.
Is it not?
All we know, Alan, this is a very good point, a good question. I mean, in a way, it's easy for me because I've been going through it all before. All we know is that Ashford Borough Council's broad policy, at least, I don't know if it's written down, but it was underlying the discussion I had with him, was that they expect all villages to at least grow a bit. They don't sort of sit still and wither. When we had the Voices survey years ago, people were asked how many houses they thought that they could reasonably have or accept, and there were various people. Some people said, none. Some said, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5, more than 5, or whatever. Most people fell into the 5 or less group. That used to get repeated to us often by Miriam, in fact, because when Pipers was going, it used to be, as she often said, people said they'd accept 5 or less per year rather than 27 in a lump. Now, 5 or less, I don't think necessarily means 5, to be honest. And I started to adopt in recent months, let's call it 3 for argument's sake, per year. 3 per year happens to tie up exactly with the broad ONS estimate of future population growth, because this just happens to be a bit of serendipity. The ONS man, the populations man from Office of National Statistics, who talked to us in the Calc AGM in November, I think it was, he said that the estimate is for 15% of growth of population in the next 25 years. This plan is 15, but that's 25. We have 500 houses, give or take, slightly more actually. 15% of 500 is 75. 75 divided by 25 years is 3 a year. That happened to just be serendipity. I'd been saying 3 before that, and I thought it was a happy thing that turned up that it was the same number. Now, there are a lot of assumptions in that. Wittersham does not necessarily grow at the same rate as the country. It doesn't necessarily grow slower because the cities are all getting done in, frankly. So it's quite plausible that the countryside goes as fast, not necessarily Wittersham. The other thing is, do we grow the housing numbers as quickly as the population numbers? That depends on the household rate of household formation. But it's a starting point. I mean, there will be people who know far more and make better estimates than that. But if we say that there seems to be a reasonable starting point of 3 plus or minus a bit, that's not a target, but it still comes back to saying 3, okay, that's not too bad, and another 3 next year, and another 3 the year after, and another 3 the year after that, and you start saying, blimey, I don't know where they're going. So there is, we're going to just have to see what's in Ashford's mind and try and figure out what's in ours, and it won't be easy. Anyway, let's move on from that one. Registering the land holdings, there is going to be a need for us to decide. This is something that I've picked up on from New Romney, who told us at one of the conferences that they've gone out to register all of their land. Some of it may be registered already, for all I know. But the point here really is protection. We ought to have registered and know exactly what we have and make it clear. Iden have had a big issue that didn't eventually go to court. It was heading to court, where the Iden Council's view, it won't be the person who did its view, was that they had a slice of their land nicked off them. Now, registering won't necessarily stop that, because land registry boundaries are always open to argument, but it's a start. At the minute, I don't know whether we have very clear registered title to anything, and it just seems that it's a sensible thing to do.
Good governance.
Yeah. Branding PC assets, that's a bit like Miriam's point earlier about the fact that we should put a thing on the village green to say what it is, and we've agreed in outline the wording. I think that it does make sense. It was the group that you were on at Voices that said, do people even know what we've got? Even if they knew what they've got, do they have any idea that it's the parish council that provides it? Okay, they may not look at the sign, but let's make a shot at it. That was what was the idea there. But obviously we are going to need to come back to a list of assets, names to be agreed, and all the rest of it. Can you each start thinking and submitting to Eve on what assets you think we have? I'm talking about land here, really. And as it happens, it's not this place, because this is the village hall. It belongs to the village hall. Churchyard wall at last, progress by Alf, who's sitting up there. He started clearing the site, and because originally the clearance was included, that will enable Yvonne to get a lower quote. So that's good, that's underway. Surface water, I think that I've been hoping to get some serious discussion with KCC about whether we can work together using our caretaker project to do a bit of a sort of little pilot on whether we can improve surface water drainage in the village, where we know that they don't do very well, although funnily enough they did the street in the last 10 days. We don't know how well they did it, but they did do it.
Did about 50% of them. The ones that were full up with rubbish are still full up with rubbish.
Okay, well that's useful then. You see, that's my point.
I'll do that tomorrow.
What I want to do...
The ones that were clear, they cleared again.
Well that's good, at least they'll keep running. What I want to do, and we've got an appointment now with Kevin this Thursday, he's acting head of drainage, is I want to drag out of him, if I can, with Yvonne, an approval and some money, I hope, to go round and do a pilot of those ones, particularly the worst ones, but do any of them, for the parish council to hire a drain cleaner, to call it, gully emptier. I can do that. I found one of the suppliers, quite happy to send an emptier and a crew along for a day. The quote I got at the time was £900. Ideally we'll get Kent to pay some of that, and I suspect we ought to put some in, and get Alf to go round with it, and we will learn how many we can do in a day, how difficult it is to clear the ones that are completely gummed up, how long it takes before it's full and has to go and tip. And I would be aiming to get Kent at least to pay for the tipping, because that's their responsibility already, and that's expensive. Now it may be that he completely blocks it and says, no, I'm not doing any of that, you're asking for all this stuff and I can't be bothered, and blah, blah, blah. Well, the fact is, his cabinet member keeps saying, Wittersham's brilliant, I love the caretaker scheme, and I want to do work with parish councils, so, I'm hoping we've got them in a pincer, to be blunt. Okay, so that's that one. We hope for some progress on Thursday. It has been quite a big effort, like months, to get a date out of him, but we have got one now. Sids, do you want to speak?
Yes. Well, no. Well, yes and no. We got it further down.
Oh, it's down the agenda. Okay, that's fine. We'll get
it's
to
not
it.
The right
You're
order.
quite right.
Thank you.
Information files for councillors. Enough said. Nothing happened yet, but I think we will get to that at some point. It's not the biggest thing. The voices, proposals and the allocation of topics is on the agenda. We were waiting until we got the 7 councillors, and we've got them now. Review standing orders. We'll do that at this point. Somewhere, where did I put it? Here we are. I did a note, but then we decided I would just deal with it orally. We did say we've got to review our standing orders. We were going to do it last autumn, but then we didn't have a full deck of councillors. Then, David, you came up with the suggestion that we have a special meeting to do it, which was sort of agreed at that time, but on the other hand, that was agreed when people didn't have to give up a different evening. What Yvonne and I have talked about, and I will suggest to you now, if it suits you, is that we do it in 3 bites. The ones we've got at the minute are from the NALC draft, which John Rivers, me and Yvonne modified a bit a couple of years ago. The 2 of us will go through that again and see if there's anything we think that could be improved, deleted, altered, whatever. And then we'll bring back sections 1 to 3 for March meeting, with obviously getting a copy of what we suggest. 1 to 3 at the March meeting, 4 to 12 in the April meeting, 13 till the end at the May meeting. You've got the chance then to look through them yourself, because you've all got a copy, see what we suggest, see if you are happy with it or what. We may not actually change anything, but I'm pretty sure we're going to change at least a few bits. Yeah. Some parts, sorry, go on, George.
Sounds like a good way forward. Yes.
Some parts of it are in bold, and those bits are you not allowed to change because it's legislative. Okay, so we'll do that. Good. Painting the village signpost, that's one for Alf. He's waiting scheduling it, but he has agreed to do it, and he's also promised not to fall off. You're going to get a tower, aren't you? Yeah.
He can't speak, remember. He can't speak.
No, but he nodded. That was good. It was good. Thank you. I'm just winding him up. Really.
That's extra.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Alf. Thank you for your nod.
Pay him to speak.
International Dark Sky Community, we're still awaiting news from ABC.
What is it you're waiting for from ABC?
That they're doing anything.
We're waiting to find out whether the 11 villages have all agreed. That was the.
I've no idea. They've drew up their SPD. So
What's an SPD?
Supplementary planning document.
All right.
So that any new developments were controlled by that.
All right.
You know, so. But as far as I don't know who is joining all these villages together. I thought it was the Dark Sky Community.
Yeah.
It was a. Oh God,
The Dark Sky Community isn't part of Ashford Borough Council.
No, it was a gentleman that presented to us.
That's
Who's
it,
The astronomical chappie.
No.
Oh, another one.
He's the UK representative for the International Dark Sky.
He was working on behalf of ABC.
All right.
I can dig his name out.
It's very timely because the early morning news this morning had an item on it, which is which was saying the first one in the south is the Sussex Downs, and they had a few minutes on that, so it's back up the top of the topical agenda.
So David, if you can dig out who it was you heard from,
we supported it.
and if you can pass that to Mick,
I don't think he was a member of the Borough Council, but anyway, let's wait and see.
but there will be someone in the Borough Council.
There was an officer from ABC that was there.
Michelle Byrne was.
Was it Michelle?
Yes, it was Michelle, and I chased. I asked Michelle when David asked about it a couple of meetings ago, and I asked her what was happening. She said there were a few internal problems, but they were working on it, and she'd get back to me as soon as she could.
Which very good. We like Michelle.
Chris Woodley Stewart, associate from 4th Street, mainland UK's first international dark sky community.
That's not Ashford Borough Council,
No, but he was the one who was presenting.
Working with.
Yeah. Because we're working with our dark sky tourism plan. Wittersham.
Several stars have gone out since we started the project.
That's just a few changing.
If maybe we ought to be chasing him, then obviously with that piece of paper, Yvonne can do that instead. I had assumed, wrongly perhaps, that Ashford was drawing it together on behalf of the Parish Council.
Yes, they are.
No, not from behalf of the Parish Council. They did put forward a suggestion to the Dark Skies community,
right,
which really sort of hit the headlines for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then it was realised that it wasn't quite what it seemed, and interest waned from Ashford Borough Council, I think.
They didn't tell us that.
But I mean, they weren't against it, but I think this chap was sort of going to do it, or this community.
Well,
we're going to do it.
Let's see.
Well, let me ask Michelle, because I know Michelle well enough.
ABC needs to be their champion, or
I would have thought so.
Yeah, because it's all linked to tourism and the economy of the area and things like that. That's why Ashford were involved in it.
I expect your leader will be very excited if we can get some PR.
He was.
And then he went off.
He won.
I see. Okay, while Mick's writing that down, move on to the next one. Last one, in fact, FAQs and useful contacts on the website. Now the contacts.
Well, that comes up.
It comes up later. Okay, yeah, you're quite right. So we've done the task list. Thank you very much.
Asking a question about the church wall. Is that just stripping the brambles away from the church wall, or actually repairing the wall itself?
It's repairing the wall down on the corner near the vines where it fell down.
Okay, I mean, when I was church restoration, the entire wall needed some maintenance.
Yes,
I don't know whether we're doing that as well.
What we're doing is where it's actually fallen down and there's nothing to stop you going in between the churchyard and the Rawlings paddock. Al's taken we've had to take a tree out because there was a tree growing actually in the wall, so we've taken that out. And we're finding as much of the stonework as we can because a lot of it was all just down on the ground. We did get a quote to redo it all along there. The bit with the existing stonework that we found, where there was a shortage, Paul Stern was going to put in some railings do it down there so that it would all done to match and fit. And also the chap that came and quoted for us said that where the bend, where the footpath goes behind the houses, that corner, it's beginning to go there. So we were going to get the ivy and stuff off there, and he was quoting for doing that as well. So it's all within what we're working on.
It might just be worth pursuing one of the grant-giving bodies, because it is an ancient wall and so on, and I might just have a look at that, because if it's a grant-giving body who would fund the entire church wall, that would be a good thing.
Excellent if you could.
That would be very helpful.
But yes, because
And you're probably more expert at that than we are.
I did have an interest in the church wall, but when
As it were.
I was always aware it was parish council responsibility there.
It's our responsibility to do it, but I expect the churches.
Now you're here, yes.
So I will take a little look at that.
Thank you,
Okay,
Alan.
that would be good. Right. We're on to then local needs housing development update. This is the 4 houses behind Jubilee Fields, or the space for them.
Yes, those of you that have walked up that way will see that the hoarding is up. I contacted Giles Holloway. I asked him to the meeting tonight to see if he could sort of give us any more information. Unfortunately, he couldn't say at the time because it's half term. So I chased him again the end of last week, and he didn't come back to me. So he's obviously not here, so quite what happened, I don't know. However, when he emailed, when I asked what was happening, because I was told, somebody told me that they were going to start digging within 2 weeks, but that's not quite right. Right, the hoarding will go up, that's gone up. Submission to the planners to discharge the pre-commencement conditions, that's now gone through, you'll probably notice on the listing, and some ecology works. So a month or so away, a real start on site with diggers, etc. Well, that was at the end of January, so we're probably talking about beginning of March.
When the ecology work's going to be done, they can take up to 6 months.
No doubt.
Some ecology works, perhaps
No
not.
doubt.
Perhaps.
Oh, they're going to have rarities up there, isn't they?
The main issue which is bothering me is the communication between the contractor and the local residents and consideration to walkers who need to navigate the footpath. We need to make sure the mini diversion is well signposted. If there are any concerns from the parish council perspective, please let me know. I will send contractor contact details to you. When we have a site manager, I will send that too. So I've asked him definitely for those, because I'd like to meet the site manager up there so that he's aware of me really, especially with the footpath going across, and where they're, how and what they're going to do and how it will affect the residents.
Indeed.
So that's
It's a nice hoarding.
Yeah, very beautiful. They had a delay on that because it wasn't painted in time.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. So that's all moving forward.
But so have you no more concerns? That's so you're happy that if I just follow through with that?
Okay. Excuse me. Now, voices. The allocation of topics then that I just covered in the task list. I think Colin and Alan, you've now got copies of this from Yvonne, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Pretty colours. Right. Where we were was that communications was previously the interest of David. Neighbourhood care was the interest of Sue. Transport was the interest of Paul. Local amenities was the interest of George. Housing has gone orphaned because of the resignations, and environment was orphaned. So unless people are determined to shuffle around, I'm hoping that the 2 new councillors can take housing and environment.
I was nobbled last week.
Were you?
Yes.
Good. For both.
No.
He said double, not
I did nod my head, I just listened at the time, but it was obviously one of those things where your arm was up your back.
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
Well, indeed.
so if that was to be true, then you would finish up with environment.
That's all right with me. Yes, I'm perfectly happy with that.
You live in the green bit of the village.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. well, if everyone's happy with that,
Yeah.
then that would be very good. Thank
I
you
need
very
some
much.
guidance as to how to begin. But
Right, well,
I need to take it
what
on.
this requires, Alan, now, okay, that's very good, because we're in a way back to the status quo ante of about 10 months ago.
Well, that's the right one.
Yes.
One month.
The plan now, therefore, is that this is the list of things that Voices would like to see in each of the 6 topic areas. Some of them have come along, some of them haven't, some of them are maybe. What we now need to do, was said 9 months ago when we had it all divided out before, and then it sort of went into the sand a bit, is for the lead councillors of each of those 6 that we've just gone through to start working themselves and with their Voices counterparts to see what can be brought forward, what actually is not achievable or not deliverable, what has got what obstacles or whatever, and we can keep in touch with that in each meeting or each 3 or whatever, so that we can get from reds to yellows to greens. Bear in mind, for those who don't know, I was on the steering committee latterly, and Roger Parker is the chairman of Voices, I think you all know. Each of these had a steering committee. Sorry, each of these had a topic committee, not the steering committee. It's slightly different because I think housing and environment were together, weren't they? But each of them have a leader. That is a person that you can find out who it is from either the website of Voices or from Roger or from Yvonne. Also, when I spoke to Roger in the week saying I was bringing this to the council tonight again to get it moving, which he was obviously pleased about after all these months, he said he would also get the Voices side kicked off again, another meeting with the steering committee to say, because there's a steering committee member on each of these sections as well, and sort of try and get the 2 halves, the 2 bits of the jigsaw to start coming together again. Because like all these things, nothing will happen until we make it happen. Some things will be very difficult, but some things we can kind of get a hand on and move forward.
Could I just ask, Yvonne, would you mind circulating, emailing that out again, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who was it, John, or was it Nigel who were environment before me?
Nigel.
Well, it was housing and environment at the time, so with Nigel, but nothing was ever done. We didn't go because at the time it was left that the chairman would get in touch with the chairman of Voices and see how they were going to go forward. But basically, that's
what happened
done
was
now. So.
That we said that we would go through each of these 1 month at a time, which we did. John started doing the spreadsheet. He got down the first 3. I then finished it off a couple of months ago based on Yvonne's minutes, but nothing ever happened to move forward from that because we got into too many distractions with exciting things like housing. Okay? So we can now make some progress on that, which will be good. Thank you. SID update.
Right.
The clerk.
I met with the PCSO and we had a long chat about where they should go. He is continuing having speed checks, he tells me. So the 2 main areas as you come into the village from either side, he was saying that it would be best to have it on the other side of the road. The main ones are, well, the main one coming in from Tenterden is obviously on the left, but you wouldn't want to have anything before or afterward. But if you had it on the right-hand side, that would tell you what you were doing, which is what this one is doing. And the same the other side, but that one coming in is on the right-hand side, so we're talking about on the left-hand side. I've contacted Darren at Ashford, and he has forwarded my email to Toby Howe, who is one above him, I believe, and for him to, because I suggested a meeting with them, but he's going to get Toby Howe, so I'm waiting to hear from Toby Howe, because it's his part that does those sort of things. So that's where we're at.
So these are the SID polls, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing that we did discuss...
The 2 of us have discussed this. When we talked about it before, we looked at the cost and found that the bigger version, which says 30 thank you, or
slow
no, so I don't
down.
say 30. It says what you're doing, 26 or 34, and it either says thank you or slow down. Okay?
Yeah.
So you can't really see it, but it's there. We said, well, it's not very much more expensive to have the posher one, so let's have that rather than the smaller one that just says what you're doing. We have figured out now there's a glitch in that idea, potentially. Firstly, the larger one is a lot heavier, but more importantly, the larger one's battery only lasts a week, whereas the smaller one's battery lasts a month. And you're allowed to leave it on the same pole for a month. Now, Alf is going to need to be humping them up and down the poles, but also very kindly taking them home to recharge. So to do that every week is just, you know, slightly protracted grief.
Quick question.
Go on.
Do they not have a spare battery? They're like power tools.
You change the battery and then recharge it.
Yeah.
Well, mate, you may be right. That's a good point.
Because to take the whole thing,
You have to move them anyway.
You've got to be
I know you do. But I mean, just my experience of where I've seen them effectively, in Biddenden and Headcourt, there's a message that goes with it. Just to have the speed there, I think it's
not enough.
And whilst I'm not decrying the ability or not to hump them up and down, you know, I just think if we're going to do it properly and have a message.
Oh, the bigger ones would be better in every sense, except that we figured out that it could be actually a problem.
But somebody else will have already
solved the job.
Yeah, someone else will have already solved this problem somewhere in the country. So
maybe you're right that there's a battery.
There must be a spare
change.
battery. You can't take that whole thing.
Does it actually
Solar
say
panels
that?
don't do it.
I don't know. That would make a lot of sense in this day and
you see
age.
them
That it was
around. They would be
self-recharging.
They're permanent.
Yeah.
As the signs are now a single-person task, costs could be minimised by identifying a small group of people to be responsible for the work and schedule. No lifting equipment will be needed, as the poles would already be in place and the sign would just need to be strapped on, aligned and secured using padlocks. Initial training will be given on the setup with further support if needed. Battery charging. A member of the parish...
say charging and changing, so you're right there.
A member of the parish council could be responsible for the charging and changing of the batteries.
It just means you'd have to do it every week rather than every month to go back and change them.
Who pays for them in the beginning?
We're hoping to get money from Mike Hill, KCC, county councillor.
Couldn't we ask about solar power?
They're not offering that. I mean,
There'll be someone somewhere who will look into that.
Usually on the fixed ones.
Yeah.
I think it's worth inquiring.
I think what you're doing, to be honest, is adding more weight and more windage.
But these things are getting smaller by the month. The technology is shrinking. We should at least inquire about that. The other thing is, what happens to the poles when there's nothing on them?
They're just
Well, they're going to look quite ugly, aren't they?
well, so they do.
You can't disguise it. I mean, if you think about what's going on in where there are other things like that, for example, radio masts. You know, they're much bigger, and they're a lot of them. These go up, they make them look like a tree or something.
Well, it'll be a pole like the ones that have things on them, except there won't be anything in them.
It'll be just a
small.
black.
Some places where they have a socket in the ground and they put the pole into the socket.
Yes,
so when they move it, they take the pole away.
Sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So that would make more sense.
Well, you're making it more and more difficult, to be honest. He's got to hump the pole.
I don't have any problem with poles.
Hope it doesn't get nicked.
We could have a competition to
It's going to look like coming into the village, just have a sort of a grey pole poking up.
Welcome to Wittersham.
The thing is, if it's movable, it will get nicked.
True.
David.
Can I just ask, because I thought when we talked about this before, we also spoke about putting one just around coming up the street.
Yes, we have. Yeah, these are other places. Yeah.
So we'll have another pole poking up. We'll have all these lonesome poles poking up.
You're right to say the street furniture gets very untidy. On the other hand, the anxiety has been about people speeding.
Yeah, so compromise.
You know, you can't make omelettes without breaking eggs.
Well, I think they look awful just like that. I think we need to seriously consider what we could do to pretty them up or something like that. I don't know. Maybe you do have a hanging basket that sits on the top and goes out. I don't know.
The Alf's going to water every year.
Yeah. When he's not changing the batteries and moving the other side.
I think it's worth looking at different options. I just think it would look very ugly. If and if you spoke to someone like Simon Ridley and said there's going to be an 8-foot, pole outside your house like that, he probably wouldn't be very pleased. The same with other people, out along the Stocks Road.
Okay, look, I tell you what, you're the person who does highways, so can I ask you to see if you can track anything down on that?
I'm quite happy to
Okay.
have a look at it. Yeah.
Okay,
But
we'll
I don't
move
think
on.
we should go ahead with that.
Okay,
Not
that's
until
cool.
we've
Okay.
Investigate the options.
We'll go back to that then. The next thing is the contacts list and the FAQs. Now the contacts list, it started when I looked up Hunton, I think it was, because that was one of the sites we were told about on social media, and this is what they had. Very small print. That's why I did it. Landscape. This was my sort of first shot with some gaps in it. But there is a contacts list. Paul, it was, who used to say, can we have FAQs on the website? And this was the sort of response of one council. So I did contacts first, the number and the email of the borough councillor here, Mick, and us two on the parish council, and the housing department hotline, and housing repairs and Outlook and film club and hairdresser and all the rest of it. So if people are happy with this is sort of stage A. If people are happy with this idea, then we can go forward with this. But I think 2 things have to be done yet. 3 things maybe. One is filling in the gaps. Secondly, for you to tell me other people that should, or places or things that should be on there. And then thirdly, I think probably as a matter of good behaviour, we should actually, apart from things like the MP and the councillors, they're all public anyway, we should actually make sure people are happy to have their names and emails up.
I think that's important.
Yeah. But subject to that, this then could go on the website.
Judy's phone number's not right.
Oh,
I noticed that one.
I think it's probably the one in my either I typed it wrong or it's wrong in my contacts.
227, I would have said. I can tell you.
Yeah, you've got 037 here.
Ah, that's probably my
that's-
typing. 027.
Yeah, that's what I've done.
Okay, thank you very much.
227.
Yeah.
027.
227.
I can tell you.
Double 27.
It's 227.
Yeah.
Well, I've probably got the wrong number in my system then.
Then.
Oh, easily.
That's Trevor's one.
Well, she did
227.
say you haven't done for a long time.
Or Lee Bailey's.
Ah,
Is that what you've done?
maybe. Where's Trevor?
Or
There's
Walden.
Oh, look,
she's-
you're right, I've got 037 twice. Trevor is 037.
Yeah, but
Oh.
also so is Lee Bailey as church warden. Where have you got your church warden?
Roger
There we go.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes.
Ah. Well,
So
something's
that's
gone
right.
wrong with pasting something. What have I got to put in? Oh, that's
right.
correct.
Yeah. 037 270.
This is Lee Bailey.
Yes, she's 037.
Are you going to go through all of
Yeah,
them?
but I've still got. You're right, George. But let's just do it while we can. 270037. But I've got it down as Trevor Bailey. Is that wrong as well? Trevor is wrong. Isn't it?
No, he's right. 037.
Oh, they're same house.
Yes.
I'm with you. Same
So,
house.
so just to remind us of the benefit of Colin and Alan, the original purpose of this was to try and encourage people when they had a question or an issue, not to keep sort of calling and dumping on the parish council. Because we're volunteers, limited time. But if we gave people the correct contact details, they could go straight to the relevant department. So I think that original premise is still there. The second part of it is it's a wonderful opportunity to actually pass on, raise awareness of all the different contacts in the village in a community sense. So the other suggestion was that not just the website, because a lot of people that in the village that don't necessarily have a computer or access that once we've got it, that we do a loose insert in the Outlook. So that people have got it and maybe update it once a year, 2 years.
Okay, which used to happen.
As I say, used to have that years
when
ago.
I put the contacts list to Paul and said any thoughts on that, he then came back and said, well, I really wanted the FAQs, frequently asked questions. So I then sat down and bashed away. At that point, Paul came back with the questions that would be, in his mind, frequently asked. So all these bold questions are Paul's.
Who's
Is that the right phone number?
When you have problems with your pushchair going past the hedge, do you call?
And
I thought we were going to call them SAQs.
and
Stupidly.
yeah, there could be that as well. Yeah. So at that point, I went through trying to write things. Now, as I explained in my long covering email, the difficulty is, apart from editing it and having the differences of view as to exactly what we say or don't say, the problem always is that we're trying to deal with a range of audience and try not to confuse one lot and insult the other. So, you're either nannying people who don't really need to be told, or you're telling people which you haven't answered the question at all because they have no idea what you're talking about. And really, that's why, and let me be quite clear, Yvonne, when she looked at this, was not highly impressed.
Yeah, but she knows all the answers. That's not fair.
Well, that's it, you see. I'm more or less said that. She said we shouldn't be going into all this stuff. Just
people aren't going to read it.
But you see, if we give them the phone number, it's on the contacts.
Yeah.
If we say, what you need to do,
the top 4 or 5.
I mean, the sort of example I came up with was, my bin has not been collected. Okay. Did you put it out? Did you put the right colour out on the right day? And was it a bank holiday?
No.
Because otherwise they ring up Ashford and say my bin wasn't collected, and they say, but you put the wrong one
on
out.
the website, you just give the link to the bin cabinet.
If they got a problem with the bin, they ring Ashford.
Yes.
Ashford sort out what the problem is.
Well, all of that is good. Okay, all of that is good. Let's not go too far with it. All of that is
Actually,
good.
for the month of March, you say if it's not been collected, you put it in.
All of that is good. All of that is good. Feel free to come back with suggested changes. If you've got better links, if you've got shorter versions or anything, we've got them. And any other questions you want in there.
Can I
But
make a
that's my first thought.
Can I make a suggestion straight off?
Please.
Can you remove the do-do at the beginning, please?
The do-do, yeah.
Where's the do-do?
What should I do?
Oh yeah. Well, I said it needed editing. Thank you.
I think that's Ashford Borough Council, isn't it?
No,
that's probably Paul's question. Okay, let's move on from there. But I await you coming back with suggestions, George.
I did send a suggestion. I can't remember if I sent it to everybody now, but I sent the full. I think it was Sturry.
Yes, you
Council,
did.
Which I didn't send as an example of how our whole website should be, but it was just their contact things that you just clicked on. It was a problem with the pavement. You clicked on that, it gave you highways or something like that.
You did.
And I thought, that's the sort of thing that we want in terms of mechanically how it would work.
Very good.
It didn't give us lots of explanations about things, but just said this is who you need to contact, and it gave you a form or a hyperlink or whatever.
I agree. In some ways, something else I said to Yvonne was that if you have areas which are very difficult to answer, you change the question or you don't ask it. I mean, we always have that opportunity. I had the difficult job of dealing with the questions that Paul thought would be nice to answer, but I was the one who had to try and think of an answer. As for Sturry, you're right, it would be much better to have links, but Sturry's site, Sturry's bigger than us, a lot more money being spent on their clerks, and almost certainly had a professional web person doing it. Now, if we can, at some point, I think you're right. I've said to Yvonne, I don't think our website is as nice as I would like it to be, but Yvonne is the person who's having to do it, and she's the first to say that that's not her area of expertise at all.
But my point was really, so looking at your frequently asked questions, you get the question and then you just put the link underneath. You don't need to say what was the problem with your bin or was it your pushjet or.
I think you're right, George. I think you're right. The question was eventually, yes, we could if we found somebody. If we can find somebody, I think George's suggestion from Sturdy
is absolutely right.
Yeah.
But we've got to get to that.
But in the meantime, we could just use that.
In the previous, before your time, let alone before your time, we've been through website grief before, where we've tried different things. Yeah. We've had some big arguments here about it, and at the moment, I mean, we're the three who go back to those days. And we have tried, we have advertised in Outlook for volunteers, we've been out and had a professional briefly and spent money on it. And at the moment, Yvonne, God bless her, is doing it as best she can on the system we've got. It's better than it was. We could go further. There are some very good websites out there, and I'm sorry to say we don't have one, but I don't see the way of getting from here to there.
But my suggestion was an interim step to that. So it was your frequently asked questions, But instead of the long,
Yeah.
pardon the expression,
No, it's fine.
you know,
I'm conscious that it's long.
I'm sure it can be done.
anecdote afterwards,
Mr.
just to
Hugo
say,
Fox,
here's the
you-
link. You've got a problem with the pavement, here's the link.
I'm 99.9% sure you can put a hyperlink on there.
I do. That's how I get all
Right,
the
so we
Well,
can,
then, exactly.
possibly
my
we can do that.
planning goes
Well,
like
in
that.
that case, let's move on. But if people can rewrite whichever ones they want, 2 of these, and suggest which link they want and all the rest of it, we will gradually
Yeah,
knock it
okay.
into shape.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you. So, future use of social media.
Just on the local businesses.
Oh, please,
section, we've only got 5 local businesses. I can't help feeling that seriously.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Please add them.
Yes,
Please add them.
Go on
But
then.
then you've got to be a little bit careful because it quite soon amounts to advertising.
Well, we're
At
not.
a very reasonable rate. You're way ahead of us.
They could even pay for the.
And they could have a joint outlook come, we could ramp up the advertising.
No,
We're not actually
we
advertising them. We're
can't.
telling them where. I mean,
Yeah.
is a telephone directory advertising?
Yes.
Well, yes, but
You
then
Pay to go in, yeah.
there's these are
That
sort of-
is.
these
That's
are
bit,
mainly
you get a free
local
entry without an advert.
businesses which are also sort of local services. There are other businesses in the village which
Yeah.
aren't so much in the service sector, and I'm not quite sure myself how that equates.
You're right to say there are no businesses on the Hunton one. They are not there.
So, I mean, should we encourage businesses to allow themselves to be on that list?
I think it's a really good question, and my suggestion is that we get the basics right there,
Yeah.
and that's Plan B or
Yeah,
Stage 2.
expand it.
But then actually, it's not beyond the wit of us to say, well, actually, we can have advertising on there that's paid, and actually they could do go in Outlook and
Pay
you
to
can
develop
click
the
on that,
website.
and they could.
I'm
put
not
it on
sure
the
that we
website.
can
I'm
do
not
that.
sure that we can actually do that. As long as it's ours, I think we probably can't.
I'm sure. I don't know. I'm sure there are other councils out there who've raised money through that. But I think it's a good
can look at
suggestion. But I think in the first instance, we stick with it.
Well, I think we're all agreed that George was giving us a recommendation of the right thing if or when we can do it. Meanwhile, if people come in with improvements, suggestions, deletions, whatever, and I take your point, Alan, it may be that we take the businesses out. It just seemed to me that if we were telling people what was around, who knows as a hairdresser here?
Well,
Most
I think
people
it would
do,
be
but
great if you could get everything you needed in Wittersham.
Yeah.
And probably, in fact, if we were to cast around and see what businesses there are, more or less everything we could. Not just food, but everything.
Sure. Well, I mean, there was the Oxney Business Group, which I believe is dormant now, isn't it?
I think it possibly is. Yeah. It's a pity.
Okay. Let's move on to social media, which is another meaty one. I circulated the 4-page note of my scribbles from the conference I went to, which was useful. Let me tell you, this is the papers I got at the conference. I haven't read them all, but the slides are there and some other stuff about PR. So hopefully you've read through these things. The broad position, it seems to me, is that we know we have a communications problem in the village. There will be many villages like that, but we know we have a communications problem in the village. It was much discussed at Voices. I was on the communications group at the time, considering it. We have things like the fact that Outlook goes to press tomorrow and is then valid for 6 weeks until the end of March. And then 1st of April we'll have another one, which we also have to put in 6 weeks. Tomorrow's is the 1st of March. Tomorrow goes until the end of April. Yeah. So on the 1st of May, you've got to do that in the middle of March. So you've got a 6-week period where you've got to, in a lumpy month, where you've got to decide what's coming up. The website, ours or anyone else's, don't really keep up with that, and websites in any case are difficult to keep up to date, although ours is good for things like minutes and that, but others aren't always. Social media, according to people speaking at the conference, a wide range. Firstly, it's more immediate. Secondly, people are more interested in it. However, John, when he was still chairman, used to be very anxious, and I think probably rightly, and he was giving one of the talks here, 2 of the talks here, on the technical issues and some of the other bits. Very anxious that if it's a parish council site, I mean, the fact is that on Twitter people are outrageous, but that's for them. If the police come along and knock on their door, that's fine, but that's the end of it. For if it's a parish council involvement, then it gets more difficult. So his view was always Twitter is best avoided. Kent County Council are doing it, but the Kent County Council can look after themselves. Better to avoid that. Facebook is a good opportunity potentially, but the advice from him and John and the KCC man was start with a closed page. I don't know Facebook, I'm not on it, I don't have children and grandchildren, and I'm old, but my understanding is that is entirely doable. John will help Yvonne to do it. The advice was that you must have the postings only done by the clerk, because that way the council controls what's going on there, and it's consistent because in our case Yvonne will know what she's got on there before, and if something changes it's a clear change rather than just contradicting herself. The downside with that on the Facebook is that if you've got a private page, a closed page rather, then you've taken away the interest in people going onto it because they can respond, but you can't let them respond because you have the opportunity of grief. There is another site, there are loads, they're listed here, he went through loads of them, he said, don't touch Pinterest, you could do YouTube, Instagram can be handy if you want pictures, don't forget you can always do a blog, and so on and so on. The other thing, which is not in that list, I talked to him about it last night, and he said, well, he didn't put it on at that time, it was quite new and he wasn't sure that it was the thing to go for. I picked it up because Pluckley, which is I was surprised to find today looking on the list, it's only our size or even slightly smaller than us. They've got 150 members. They've incidentally just about done their neighbourhood plan. There are 150 members on a new one called Next Door. I'm also told second-hand that Great Chart, which is much bigger than us, and Bettersden, which is slightly bigger than us, are both doing it, and they're quite happy with it. I heard that second-hand though. What Next Door is, which apparently I think started in America, then went to some other European country and came to Britain last summer, is a kind of sort of local version. I don't really know Facebook, I've never used it, but a sort of more local version of Facebook, where it's to do with a locality within a certain number of postcodes. So it would be Wittersham. When I first looked at it about a month ago, I just went on the website to see what it said about itself, and I put in my postcode to say, is there a Wittersham group, and it said no. 2 days ago or yesterday, I then got an email from their system saying, you were interested in our group, someone's just set one up. And I sent the thing to you all saying, was it any of you? It wasn't any of you, and it wasn't John either who I asked. It was a lady called Patricia Ashton Cobb. You heard this already?
No, I just know her. So she
okay. Well, she did it, and she was first member. I then signed up yesterday and became second member. That's how I found that she was the first one. I've since invited Roger, and Roger's invited Valerie.
And I'm on.
And you're on. Good. Excellent. Excellent. We've got 5 already. They do say we have to have 10 by some day in March, otherwise they'll strike us off and send us into outer darkness. We're only just learning what it will do, but it does in effect give you a community where you can all communicate with everybody else on it, either globally or individually. The main thing about it is that it grows by invitation. It does say on the thing I just got today, when I invited Roger, that you can invite friends, as it calls them friends, who live outside the area. I'm not sure if they have the same membership or if it's a sort of, well, you're not quite the same because you're not in the same postcode. What I do know is that because I did it from their invite, Roger didn't have to do this because I invited him, but I had to fill in all my details, including a landline address with the bill on my address. I then got a code. They then had the computer ring my phone. I had to put the code in, and then I was accepted as who I was and where I was. I was authenticated.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get over the worst. Did you have to do the code? Yeah. Because you went in on your own volition.
Yes.
Yeah.
So who's authenticating it? Who's securing the data?
The organisation that run it.
And how secure are they?
Well, it's the same as anything else. Every time you order anything from someone online, you have to give a certain amount of information.
No, but you can go through two-step authentication.
All this is they have my name, my address, and my email and my phone number. Well, all of them are in the phone book apart from my email.
Use a mobile.
Using that mobile, what we don't know is if someone did have a mobile, how it checks your location. Because I was asked to give a landline which was billed to my address. They won't be able to access that. I don't think they know who the address is.
I did mine on my mobile.
Either. So it worked.
Did mine on my mobile.
It may be that some of it's flannel.
But
anyway, that's where we are.
You're talking about having something where you were channeling information through the clerk, which
No, that's
Facebook. So I'm trying to think.
This is as individuals.
So this is like I had a look at it, and it's like a community notice board.
Yeah, exactly.
Forum. So it's a bit like
it's a forum or a notice board.
Where what's his name lost his dog.
Exactly, it would be good.
Spud went down the hole, and that was notified by everyone, just passing through. This was.
Let me jump in then again. The point about this one next door is that would not be parish council. Nobody owns it. It's a community thing. It's a community forum, notice board, bulletin board, and enables people to contact each other. If we have, this is the way my mind is working, and you can respond. If we have Facebook as a closed page, people can't respond. They could respond on Nextdoor, however they like, to everyone else who's on Nextdoor, but it's not on the parish council site. So in other words, if people want to say something themselves generally, they can use Nextdoor. They can say, I've lost my dog, don't forget the flower show on Saturday, anybody know a good plumber, this is the sort of stuff they suggest. The Facebook page would be for the parish council, able to say to people in a timely way, which Outlook doesn't allow us because of its limitations. It can only publish once a month and it has a print deadline. The Facebook page would enable the parish council to say this, that or the other, which if people keep up with it will know what's going on. And it's in a way, neither of them solves the whole problem, but they solve the problem between them. And that seems to be the only way we can get over wrestling this problem about wanting to communicate better, but not wanting to lead ourselves into too much trouble. Now, maybe, as was suggested, if you have a closed page on Facebook, eventually you decide to bite the bullet and see how you get on.
Facebook would be about informing. Nextdoor would be about discussion.
Two-way communication.
So at the conference, just forgive me, because one of the dangers of this is that I've seen this in organisations where people get something like Facebook or Nextdoor or whatever, and say, right, this is great, what can we make it do? And in my view, that's the completely wrong way around. If we're going to get involved in something like that, we need to make sure we have the appropriate policy, the purpose.
Well, we do need a policy,
why are we doing it? And then seek the solution rather than the other way around. And so, for example, if it's actually, most closed user Facebook groups are there for someone to post an article, some information, and then you get the comments. The moderation comes from the owner of that particular Facebook group. So, if on your Nextdoor, is there a moderator? Is there an owner? If someone applies for membership, can you get turned down? Because that could have.
I think if you're invited, you're invited. I think, if I understand correctly, and of course I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But my understanding is the point about Nextdoor is that you've gone in on your own name and they've checked who it is and where they are. That's the point. So on Twitter, where you can be abusive on Mickey Mouse, maybe on Facebook, I don't know how Facebook works. You can't do that on.
You can be like that on any social media.
But I'm not sure they have checked on Nextdoor, because I was asked, you put your postcode
Depends
in.
who you put in.
You put your postcode in, and then
the
list of addresses on that postcode come up, and you click one.
Yeah. Well, they could be selling the marketing.
That's it, really.
The point about it is that if it's that,
I
think, you know, we should be thinking about what is the parish council's policy on social media.
Well, indeed, we should have
and
a policy.
Be, if you've got these other parish councils that have got this all rolled out, maybe we can just get a copy of theirs rather than start from scratch.
It'll be on the website if they do that.
Well, they might or might not have it.
I don't take from any of what you just said, and in a way, one of our problems is that this is the discussion night. I didn't want to just come along with a proposal and say, are you going to agree it? So we're having a discussion. The fact is we're going to have to come back with a proposal for it to be agreed, because that's the nature of our rather slow process. That's what we have to do. It's not on the agenda as a decision. It's on a sort of, let's talk about it.
But next
we would need a policy. Next door is private, but that doesn't stop us.
Because there are already two Wittersham social media sites, which are ones that are set up, so people in which you want to sell a wardrobe or buy this or do that, they're there, they're already going. You know, you can get that. I know Julia's sort of gone. So, that's a way of passing information.
Freegal does that as well, doesn't it? Freegal.
It's a similar thing. Yeah, there's all sorts
of you can sell things or put things.
There'll be lots of possibilities.
So there are lots of possibilities out there. And also people exchange information through their own Facebook connections. I think the point about it is that if we're going to have
lots of people have a Facebook, because of course apparently 50 or 60%, according to this thing, 50 or 60% of people are on Facebook, but only 20% of councillors, which is very, very telling, and I'm one of the ones who's not. I prove the point. But they're on because they've got the children, of course, which is what you're saying. They've got Facebook groups all over.
So can I just, several things are springing into my mind. So the first thing is, so one of the things that I've said that I will leave and we've clarified earlier is working with voices around communication.
Indeed.
And I think whatever we decide to do should be complementary to what...
Well, when I spoke to Roger yesterday, and he did join straight away, he was quite happy to say, I suggested that if next door is to be, let's say with a very small p, promoted around, because of course it's promoted by invitation, it rolls out by people rolling it out, then voices might wish to play a part in that. Because Voices was a community initiative. I mean, it was actually started by the parish council, but it became a community initiative. It was always arm's length.
So the other thing for me is we need to be really clear about what's the problem we're trying to fix. Yeah. So what is it we want to solve?
We don't communicate very well. We don't have the tools.
So I think anywhere you go, in any business, any organisation, wherever it be, people are always most critical about communication.
Oh, they always are.
And I think whatever you try to do, you can sweat yourselves trying to fix communication, and you never will. So I think it's just being really clear about what it is you want to achieve.
Okay, let's take an example. You're going to have your litter pick on the 10th of March, is it? Or the 11th?
11th. It's the 11th.
Communication.
Yes.
But on the 9th of March, what are you going to do to remind people to come? Or the 10th? You can't put it in Outlook. It was in there. It's already in the bin.
Yeah.
That's a very tall man to walk down the street with a sandwich board and a bell.
That's one of the problems.
Yeah. Okay. So let's measure then how effective posters are, Outlook on occupancy are. Let's see how many people come, because actually it may not be the communication that's the problem. It may just be that people don't want to engage with it. So in which case,
well, that may be true.
So the other thing
is that part I can't help.
No. So with Facebook, we've got to be clear. If we go down Facebook, although it's a closed community,
closed page.
Friends, so it would appear, so I'm on Facebook, it would appear in my friends,
presumably,
and my friends would have access, and they would be able to see. So we've got to be careful, so it's not closed just to the people that signed it up to.
Oh no, I think anyone can see it, but they can't put anything on it.
No, I get that. I just wanted to make that clear that it still can be seen. And then I guess the other thing for me with something like Nextdoor or Facebook is if someone moves away, where do you control? What sort of control?
Well, what control do we want? I mean, if you put something in the local paper, you don't control who reads it.
No.
You've put it there because people can read it.
The editor controls it in theory, don't they?
No, I'm saying if it's there, yes, the editor says what's there, but Yvonne will say what's there.
Yeah, I do.
Let's be clear.
It's not the outgoing; it's the incoming that we're trying to control, isn't it?
Yeah. We're not controlling it; we're stopping it.
Controlling it.
Yeah.
The other thing for me So you talk about the clerk having responsibility for this. This could grow. It could be a huge piece of work, more work.
I did ask her that, and she said she could do that. I'm conscious of the fact. I did
7
also.
days a week.
Which arm did you have?
No, didn't at all. I also said to her about the hours, because we pay Yvonne 50 hours a month, of which 5 are part of the caretaker project. And I did say to her that at one level, I'm not averse, although we have our budget set, but there's probably room in it. I'm not averse to the hours being increased. But I did suggest to Yvonne from her side, she possibly doesn't want to commit to those hours. The fact is that she does more hours, but she doesn't have a commitment to do the hours. And Yvonne was kind enough to agree with me.
The challenge with social media, of course, is it's 24/7. It's not.
They do say that you have to keep monitoring it.
Well, you know, and actually, a lot of people are more active in the evenings at weekends rather than necessarily at work.
But there's nothing coming in, you see, on
But
Facebook.
yeah, as I say, if it's Facebook, surely it's what we want to put on it.
Yeah.
So it's
no one's
it's not
coming back.
continual. It's not.
I have no experience of Facebook groups where no one can comment. I can't see how that can grow, and you can't pass news around. To me, so what personal example? I have a good friend of mine who's currently in the Arctic Circle in a Land Rover, and that's a big expedition. And he's got a whole lot of friends, and he's just commenting on his trip and all the bits and pieces, and people making comments, and it's incredibly interactive, and it's a burst of activity because he does these expeditions every couple of years.
That's really exciting.
It's incredibly interesting.
And it would be great if
he's
we could
posting
do that.
pictures, and people are coming back, and people making comments and what have you. If you have something where you are the only person who can effectively populate it, stock the books in the library or something, I don't see how that could. Every time someone wants to put something on, any bit of news, they've got to get hold of you, email you, and then you've got to do that. That's really not how Facebook works.
It's quite
very
unsocial.
interactive.
Oh, I understand. I totally, as I said earlier in what I was explaining, I totally understand, as I put at the beginning more or less, that the advantage of Facebook is it's interactive, and that means that people are more interested in it. The problem is that opens you up to stuff that you then are open to having grief with. And the advice from people who have done this stuff was at least start with a closed page, and if you take the plunge later, do it when you're more confident. But as soon as you take that plunge, if you do, you're back to what Paul said. It's 24/7, 7 days a week. And one of the things I didn't know, I've never been on Twitter either, is that apparently in Twitter, if you do not repudiate something that someone's put on within 4 hours, Twitter will regard it, Twitter people, the company, will regard it as not challenged, and they will be very loath to do anything about it, whatever it is.
You've got to be on the button.
In other words, Twitter is ridiculous.
So what we were suggesting earlier then was
that but to be fair, 99.9% of Twitter works incredibly well. It's unfortunately, particularly recently, the bad stuff has risen up. We now seem to be governing the free world through Twitter.
Okay.
I don't think, with our cumulative knowledge of social media, that we're in a position at the moment, as you said, to make a decision. We need to think about it.
Well, it would have to come back.
And certainly, as far as next door is concerned, I know nothing about it other than I've just signed up for it. And the purpose of signing up was just to try and find out about it. So perhaps if we can spend, I think you suggested earlier, perhaps Paul could.
Well, I think
whoever it was,
it sits in the
communication. Yeah, David.
Okay. Next door is not ultimately a decision for the parish council.
No.
I have explained next door as the other half of the deficiency of Facebook private page, which is what Paul's put his finger on, and I did earlier as well. So if we do a Facebook private page, we don't have the advantage of interactive, but next door would bring that, but it would not be in the parish council's ownership. It would be for individual councillors. All of us can, if we wish, go on and we can all use it, same as everyone in the audience, everyone else, the public seats. Facebook, we would have to take a decision to do, and I'm only suggesting we do it on the most cautious basis.
But my suggestion was we need to find out more about everything before we even get to
going
that
back
point.
to David's point though, you know, why are we doing it?
Yeah.
You know, that's the key thing.
Is that something, David, as our communications man, then, that you would like to think about and put something together?
Yeah.
If you can do it by next month, we can put it on the agenda.
You
Can I
keep us
informed
as well.
Yeah. Can I make a suggestion? I guarantee we're not the first parish council in England to do this. So I would hope that somebody like NALC, for example, or CALC at a lower level, will have a guidance document, a policy document, a format, a template, an approach. So I will get in touch with them and see. You know,
if it's stupid to reinvent them.
Exactly. Yeah.
But didn't you go to the, wasn't it a
It was a
conference
CALC
that you went
conference.
to?
I mean, I've got the whole thing here. Everyone there it was all CALC.
Yeah.
The NALC man, by the
CALC.
way, came and did one of the talks.
So we've got the information.
But it's not a case. I mean, to say, oh well, there must be everything we need. I think that is, to be honest, being somewhat optimistic. And it's not really, don't reinvent the wheel. Everyone reinvents the wheel in their own fashion. We're not inventing social media. I'm merely trying to pick up on the opportunities that could fit the parish council. Now, we don't have to do anything. We can stay as we are. No. But I don't think we're the only ones. I don't think I'm the only one who's saying that communications in the village aren't very good. The communications group of Voices said it. Roger has said it to me many times, and at the Voices steering committee.
Nicholas Hurst has said
Nicholas
it.
Hurst has said it. I mean, I only now put a report of the parish council in the Outlook each month, and I take the trouble to do that, and I've got to do it by tomorrow. I don't have a month to do it, because that's the deadline. I do that because Nicholas Hurst said it would be a good idea, and I thought, well, I've often thought it would be a good idea, but it wasn't the practice before. So we now do it, and you approved at the council that I could. Communications can be improved. The question is, social media, potentially the answer, but we've got to actually decide what we want to do. David can help us, and take courage in at least one hand and do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. The fire hydrants. I've sent you a note. Yvonne and I gave up our Sunday lunch 10 days ago.
Had a couple of biscuits and a cup of coffee.
2 biscuits and a cup of instant coffee. The key is that this is a rerun. Yeah, this is a lovely fireman. This is a rerun of what was done about 2 years ago and then never happened. 3. They asked us to help them with fire hydrants. Yvonne said yes, we were willing after we had a discussion here. We did agree to do it, but then she never heard again. Night Roger, night Valerie. Right. It seems that some other councils did get involved. I don't know why we dropped through the cracks, but as I say, we did actually agree it before. They're really not asking very much. I think we can do more than they're asking. They're only asking us to keep an eye on the hydrants and tell them when there's a problem. They will tell us where they are. They think the average village has 15. There's a wet finger. They also said they'll come round the villages that are interested and make sure they're all, tidied up before we start. But they'd then like to be told whether a hydrant post, the concrete posts that have been broken by the hedge cutter, or the hedge has grown over it, or whatever, or the grass has grown over the manhole that it's down, or whatever. So that part seems to me to be pretty straightforward. They've asked if we can do it. We did say 2 years ago we could. We should be able to go with that. Because we've got the caretaker scheme with Alf, and we put, at least in Wittersham, we put quite a bit of money into that, I think that we should be able to do a bit more than that, and in collaboration with KFRS. And for instance, if the hedge is growing out over the post that says hydrant 15 feet, instead of saying, oh, the hedge has grown over the hydrant sign, Alf can cut it. If the grass is growing over the manhole so you can't get it up, he can cut it. So the Wittersham ones we can definitely look after, in my view, and we will have to say to them that.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Do we have an up-to-date map?
No,
they will give it.
It's coming in 6 weeks' time, which will now be 4.5 weeks' time.
Yep.
When they've gone round the whole lot.
Once we've got that, and that's in the parish, not just the village.
Yes, it will, wherever there are hydrants, it will mark all the hydrants.
They'll tell us where they are. They know where they are, and It's coming in about another month. We are warned that we can't put it on, that we can use it, but we can't put it on the website because apparently it belongs to the water company.
Yeah.
Now the next question that's in the sheet here is, Alf of course works for 4 villages. I'm saying we should do the extra work first of all in Wittersham because we are paying extra money towards him. It may indeed be perfectly possible that he can do all of them because he's there anyway. But I see that as being phase 2, really. If we want to do that, we'll need to agree it here, and Yvonne will need to go and talk to the other villages.
So the other parish councils will need to agree as well.
Yeah, I think so. But the fact is, we don't think any of them have been to those. Oh, you're going to ask them if they've been to the presentation?
Yes, we need to ask whether they have been to any, and do they want Alf to look up,
Exactly. That's the principle.
check the ones in.
That's the principle of it. But anyway, that's making progress. As I say, part of it was agreed last time, and because we've got Alf, it seems straightforward that we can do more once we get the map, which we should have in about a month's time.
As long as we're not getting to blood and stone, with Alf. How much we can ring.
Yeah, should, yeah. To agree the date and format for the annual parish meeting. This is when everyone can come and hear the presentations from the worthy borough councillor and also worthy county councillor, and even from me, if Yvonne writes it for me. The suggested date we had was 27th of April.
Alan can't make that one.
You can't?
Easter.
Alan can't.
Oh, Alan.
Thursday.
You're away.
It's a Thursday, yes.
Are you going to be back from your trip?
I think I'm here, yes, I'm going to be at the I'll be back from March's meeting.
It's the Wittersham choir tour to Germany.
Well, right,
I have to go as a groupie.
You're a roadie.
No, he said groupie, he knows what he meant.
I tell you what, it translates very well into German.
Have you got a detailed work schedule on that?
Right. Okay, so is 27th of April all right, except for Alan?
Yes, I'm okay.
And the whole of Wittersham Choir.
Quite, yes.
They won't be there.
No,
Critical.
they'll all be away.
And
All 3 of them.
We usually start by
20
now,
or
don't we?
something.
Do we usually start at 7?
No?
Oh, 7:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was hopeful.
7:30, okay. And did you already find out that Mike Hill's all right for that? Because she was chasing you for the date.
No, I can't. I can't.
So it's not definite until we find that Mike Hill's okay for it.
But I think because it's so far in advance, that's why she asks now.
You could have it as a webinar, so you could dial in.
Yeah.
Germany calling.
We could see, Ode to Joy or something.
I was going to say we can Skype you.
As a matter of information, I think I put it on an earlier note, but 2 of you won't have had this. Mike Hill said he will be standing for election again in May, because this is actually 27th of April is only a week before the election.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll be able to come.
Right, I will then now check
all
that.
sorts of promises.
There will be purdah, yes, but I just thought
Yeah.
it really can't discuss political things.
What about economic things? Or is that the same, effectively?
But he's actually coming to give a report, isn't he?
He'll be asked
Well,
questions.
yeah, but he'll be asked questions. So right. And I think
But he's
we'll
coming
have
as a
right
councillor,
questions.
so that's the
You're
issue.
not up for election this time, though. You come the same time as us.
So you can ask the
But I'm
questions.
not sure.
If he's going to be there, we need him to be able to answer questions.
We need to check with him.
So, well, the thing is, what I'll do now, before I book the hall, I will go back to
Yeah.
his PA and say, this is when we would like it. Is
I'm
that
sure he won't
convenient?
come.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he definitely does.
But
That's
not if he can't
why
say
we
anything.
started
No.
thinking we have to have a date.
If it came the week before, it might be.
Well, the trouble is that Perda is about 6 weeks before, I
Oh,
think.
yes, yeah.
Oh, right, so
So in other words, you see, it's sort of late March.
it might have to be after.
It affects
Anyway.
all sorts of things as well.
What?
It affects all sorts of things.
Yeah. Okay,
can have it in
we'll find
March,
out what's
April
happening
or
there.
May.
Next one, Sue, is yours, Wittersham School Bus.
Sorry, before we move on. Sorry, just on the topic of
Oh, yes, we haven't done-
parish meeting
You haven't had...
theme.
Yes,
We
quite.
talked about a theme, didn't we? So often we talked about one of our early meetings was a theme around volunteering,
Yes, you did.
celebrating volunteering and supporting your local community. we talked about that as a theme for the evening.
Yeah.
Well, that's all volunteering,
I know.
except for Yvonne, obviously.
I think David raises a really important point there, because one of the things that we're increasingly aware of is the decline of volunteering in the village. It's the fact we have great difficulty in populating committees and all sorts of things, and it's something that I think is an opportunity to kind of, and in fact I was thinking, not kind of go back on the whole social media thing, but one of the reasons for that could be to put together some sort of volunteer bureau, or ask people for a register of their talents or the things that they can contribute. There's a real opportunity there.
What we need for that is better communication.
Yeah, but horse and cart and chicken and egg come, at that meeting, the annual parish meeting, I think going back to the theme, there's an opportunity to even get in somebody to talk for about 5 or 10 minutes about the challenge of volunteering in a rural community. You can find someone to do that, make it something of real interest, and try and stir up and get people to realise, one of the questions is, what's the point? You can't achieve anything. What's the point? Why should we help out in this? And there's so many other things that are in people's schedule these days as well. And I think we have to bang the drum a bit for the fact that lots of the institutions in the village rely 100%, if not on volunteers.
Yes.
And so going back to your point about having a theme, volunteering in the community could be.
But how do you get people to something that aren't ordinarily volunteering? Because people that aren't mad keen on that won't want to go because they'll end up volunteering for something.
Think they've been.
Well, I think I don't think there's a magic wand. There's no magic answer. We could say, well, let's not do anything, and it'll decline.
I agree. But how do you get people
that's
in?
What we have to put our heads together and work out and come up with some ideas and what have you. Maybe what we do is we make some sort of composite event.
There's two issues. I mean, getting people to come to the parish council, the annual meeting is one issue. How to get them to come to that, and then how to get them to come to it if they're worried they might be asked to volunteer for something as well.
So I think one of the opportunities is probably to invite those that do currently volunteer. So if I think about the number of people that put a load of effort into the big breakfasts, lots of people that run the Flower Society or the Film Club. All of those things, they're all they're all volunteers, aren't they?
Yeah.
So maybe we do something around celebrating and then driving, and there'll be people in the
football team,
school governor. So they're all around us.
There's lots of
hawkers or the walkers.
Walkers.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Jill and I volunteer to walk.
Yes, I suspect that actually most people who want to volunteer do find a niche for themselves.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that we noticed, and that's the big breakfast, and also the once a month
Old people's lunch.
Oh yes,
there are people out there, and Julie's actually the person who's really good at tapping into this, and also saying there are people out there who, if you ask, they'll do it, but they won't come forward. And your point about that, if I come along, I'll be asked to volunteer. Well, that's against the spirit of it.
Yes,
You've got to turn it round, and I'm just thinking it's an opportunity. It's a bit like the rubbish collection.
There's something for me too, though. So going back to your point around Judy, actually, so I don't go to church in the village. I go to church in 10 to 10. Actually, we need to go beyond the church as well, beyond that community, because for me it's about villagers rather than, because church is something else.
Yes, but I think people. I mean, like
where it starts.
The big breakfast, for instance, that's very community.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really good example.
And the lunch club is very community. It's not. It might have been instigated by the church, but it's certainly not run by the church people.
What big breakfast is.
There were loads. No, there were more people there. Yes, last time.
No,
people running.
No, that's what I mean.
What? And clearing up.
No, usually the same ones.
Yeah, we had 4 new people there that certainly don't go to church.
The point I'm trying to make is that I agree with David, but it starts. That's 4 more people than we had at the very first one.
I think the hard thing is getting people, is breaking the ice with people to get them volunteering, because I think most people in this room are volunteering in more than one capacity. And I think once you start, you get involved in lots of things.
We've had quite a turnover of new people in the village in the last 3 or 4 years.
But if we come down to cases, what are we actually able to do at the annual meeting, who could we find to come, what will they say, who will we get to come and listen, what impact will it have? I haven't seen my way through that yet. I'm all in favour of all
Just raised it.
the sort of, it would be good to be celebrating volunteering and persuading more people to volunteer and explaining what volunteering opportunities there are, but I haven't quite sort of seen it crystallise yet.
Do you have some people just coming along and talking about how they volunteer and what do they do? Like a marketplace almost.
Because it's something about, I'm just doing a workbook at the moment, which is all about, it's called Build Your Own Rainbow. And it's all about where you are in life. So it's about work, and it's about paid work. And it's all about the satisfaction that you get from doing things that aren't necessarily paid work. So whether you do something around that, I don't know, or because we probably all do this because we get a degree of satisfaction from it. You know, we put in more hours than people see because it's not just what happens here; it's all the work we did outside meetings. But it's the satisfaction that we derive from that. And when we've come to look for a volunteer warden,
we didn't get one.
We didn't get anyone come forward. And this is that's where this conversation started, wasn't it?
Or Speedwatch.
Speedwatch.
Or see how many people turn up for the litter.
Yeah.
It's all those things, isn't it? The reality of it.
Well, that would be the interesting thing.
Well, my question still hangs in the air, please.
Yeah, it does.
Volunteering, there's two types. There's your litter pick, which is a one-off. And then there's the others where it's a regular thing, and then you're expected to do it.
Vocational.
Right, which is like we are sitting here.
Yeah.
You know, right? And why aren't you there? Questions asked, you know. But you're still volunteering.
Oh yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I used to work for the youth service, Kent Youth Service, and a lot of that is run by volunteers. But other than the fact they didn't get paid, they got treated the same as anybody else. Because you expected them to be there on a Tuesday night to open the door, because that's what they'd agreed to do. So you couldn't say, "Oh, turn up when you like." So I think that's the other issue. People sometimes don't want to commit themselves on a regular basis. They do a one-off litter pick, or the other thing they'd almost put across it would come to committee meetings. They don't want to do that. Anything that involves a committee meeting, definitely not.
Well, some people will, and some people won't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the nature of people's
Generally
motivation.
they'd rather do it. They do things rather than talk about them.
I mean, I think the thing is that there are reasons why people do it, but very often it's about creating awareness, and the litter pick's an example.
Can you do a talk then at this meeting about, as it were, the joys of volunteering, or how people could see volunteering as being a useful part of their lives and the value of it?
I'll do it some thought and come back to you.
Okay.
The other thing about is getting funding for volunteers.
Because you're nearer to it than most of us are, in the sense of thinking it through.
Most are short of funds. So what we could do is have someone talk about this is how you apply for funds for your voluntary group. There's no volunteer group in the whole of this village who's got surplus funds. And that's a big issue.
So somebody would be who?
Oh, we can explore that. We can get someone to talk to the Rural Kent people. I mean, there's all sorts of people. You know, look at for example, the Copy Caravan initiative. That's not all running on one paid person. That depends on each of that rollout program is entirely dependent on the villages. The villages it's going to in the first schedule, having volunteers in each of the villages to basically embrace it and promote it.
I think the Clarendon Community Shop is a very good example.
A good example, yes.
And I think they're looking quite good.
In fact, if you look at our emergency plan that we put together a couple of years ago, we approached it by saying, well, who's got what skills, talents, and experience that we put together. Now I know farmers are on some sort of retainer, what have you, but all the people down there with chainsaws and what have you were volunteers.
Okay.
They were asked.
Well, they could have said no. I mean, the spirit of volunteering isn't completely dead.
If you think about that a bit, David, and see if there's something you can do for, as you said, a few minutes, and if you take advice from Paul on whether there's someone in ACRK who can talk about funding, I'm not.
Or funding budgets, that's the...
It's amazing what a crisis does as well, of course, because I don't know if anyone was in the village at the time of the Great Storm. I mean, all the roads were blocked. I remember getting out there with my chainsaw, but the trouble is, by the time I got there, it had all been voluntarily moved.
Free wood.
tremendous.
Okay, let's move on. Otherwise, we'll be here all night again. Let's move on, or we'll be here all night again. Sue, on your school bus.
Yeah. There is quite an issue with the school bus. It's funded totally by KCC, and they are the ones that put in the contractor. The school have nothing to do with it whatsoever. There are now 40-ish pupils on the school bus, coming from Stone Ebony and Appledore. So the school is now really, well, because of its own success, but in a way that's a good thing. It is the largest body of pupils coming in Kent to the primary school, we're told.
By bus?
By bus.
The largest bus line?
Yeah.
The big bus.
And
wow.
The problem is, many years ago, and we think it's probably about 15, they did away with the carer people that were on the bus.
Yes,
there was normally somebody else. Because they said they couldn't afford it.
That's the bus conductor, in fact.
Yeah. But the bus driver now has got 40-ish pupils behind him, ranging from 4 to 10. And every day they're dealing with crying pupils getting off the bus in the morning, and then parents in the evening, because the children have got off crying at the other end because
they're being bullied, teased, whatever.
Bullied, there's swearing, there's whatever else, and obviously the driver can't do anything about it because he's concentrating on what he's doing. She's written to KCC 3 times and basically not got anywhere.
Has she got a response at all?
She's got no response whatsoever. I've given her Mike Hill's details because he's normally very good.
He is, yeah. And
Paul's given me another contact which I've also passed to her. It's just
the problem, I suppose, with them is that whatever happens, whatever Mike says, they ain't going to come up with the money for a conductor. So the answer is going to be a volunteer rota of parents, isn't it? All grandparents.
That was suggested, but Claire is not at all happy about that because it's just not going to work. Because if you've got a parent coming from Stone, they're going to get taxed because
they go back. You'll have to come. The parent will have to get on the bus at Appledore when it leaves the depot, and stay on the bus till it gets back to the depot, won't it?
They don't come from
wherever they come from.
Okay, so the transport side doesn't work that way.
Something of that size would just be too unwieldy to be parents.
It's a 52.
They all have to be DB access to check.
You do that.
You need the principle of having somebody who is.
And do the parents all get the transport free because they're more than 3 miles away or whatever the rules? So there's no question of the fare for the bus being made to cover it. There's no fare
at all. No. But I don't know that the parish council didn't do anything, but I thought it was best that you knew what was going on because the school's in the parish.
I think KCC, as the contractors and the people hiring it, have got a duty of care to the children. And I think that's something those words need to be used. I didn't agree with your email saying it was a serious safeguarding issue. To me, that is something totally different.
Well, no, that is still called safeguarding because it's children, it's safeguarding the children.
It's absolutely a safeguarding issue.
I mean, it wouldn't happen. You can't go on a school trip with just a driver on there.
There's a duty of care to the driver as well.
Yes.
Yeah. If there's an accident, what can you do?
Walk up and down the road, and there's one of them saying, within 1 car length of leaving the school, there's children taking their safety belts off because there's no one on the bus.
Okay, let Claire get on to Mike and see what can be done. I mean, ultimately, all we've got really is the opportunity to be making supportive voices.
The very first thing, of course, is that when a mistress at a school that's running the biggest bus in KCC's responsibility writes 3 times and is ignored, that's totally unacceptable, full stop. Which is why I suggested she writes the chairman of KCC's transport, the cabinet member for transport.
She's got that.
And she's got that now.
Right, Paul Carter.
What about Damien Green? Could she not write to Damien Green?
Well, he only passed it on to them, won't he?
It'll only bounce.
Yeah.
Leave her to do that. You've discussed it.
He at least has to respond.
You've discussed it, and let's wait for her to try Mike and all
I mean,
the
there
other.
probably won't much happen this week because they're on holiday. So.
And presumably there hasn't been a serious incident, there hasn't been an assault.
No one's
Oh,
died. No one's died yet.
No,
But
Is what you're saying.
no, but
I mean, or actually
so-
like 10-year-olds and so on, and
Four-year-olds.
and it wouldn't be long before something actually.
No, it could
really
happen.
significant.
Okay.
The thing is, I think you've got to be careful because if you make it so serious, then you've got a duty of care to say, or Claire's got a duty of care to say, in that case we won't allow the children to travel on the bus because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, by allowing it to happen, knowing it's not safe, you're in the same situation. Really. So I think that's you tread a fine line if you're not careful.
All right, let's move on.
okay.
We've got to authorise payments now, which is your printer cartridges. Is that agreed? What was that?
Thank you. You said it's supposed so.
Yes, suppose so, right. It is supposed.
Yes, yes.
And we've got to reimburse you for framing the scroll. Okay. We did put out, did we have any success with the press release?
Didn't hear anything back.
No.
But I don't get the paper, so
I got the local paper on at the weekend, and it turned out to be a Maidstone edition by mistake. So I haven't
Was
looked
it?
through the tentative one again yet.
Paper, yeah.
It was in the local paper. Oh,
How was it?
I think Jennifer Maynard put the picture in and
Oh, good.
It
Well, I
wasn't- it wasn't written
I
on
did-
paper.
We missed it.
I did both. I did it as well.
Yeah,
Well, I've just got the local paper for last week, so it might be in there.
Okay.
yes, it wasn't.
Good.
Thank you.
It wasn't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Even the papers fail in their communication office.
Yeah.
So you're not true.
And
Okay.
I've sent it to clerks and councils direct,
Brilliant.
and they've acknowledged it.
Good.
So
Might get it in there. Good. Right, correspondence, Kent Community Speedwatch.
yes, I did forward this to you all, so you have seen it. I don't know whether you want to take any action on it. This was Speedwatch schemes help community volunteers reduce excessive speeds on local roads, operating at the roadside in 20 mile per hour, 30 and 40 mile per hour areas. Volunteers monitor speeds using a speed indication device. SID. The owners of vehicles, well, you know all that, what it expects to do. Who runs the scheme? With support and direction from Kent Police, each scheme is managed and operated by the local community.
Yeah.
How can I get involved? Community leaders such as councillors, wardens, community support officers or other motivated individuals. Identify members of the community aged 18 plus
So I have a
who want to
suggestion, Mr. Chairman,
volunteer.
on that, as we've seen it all, so I'll take that on board.
Okay.
And I'll
Well,
park it.
obviously it ties up with SIDS
I'll park it
anyway.
I was going to say it ties up with
If we
SID.
don't have SIDS, we
And,
can't have community
but if
speedwatch.
it needs a home, in the transport area, it makes sense.
Okay,
So
that's fine. Good.
So you'll take that forward.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying I'm going to park it at the moment, excuse the pun, because we haven't got any volunteers
And we haven't got any SIDS.
and we haven't got any SIDs. So I think we'll put it on the list, right, and we'll prioritise it. But I think at the moment, the SIDs, the actual SIDs themselves,
Yeah.
by
So
the
that-
school and what have you, will focus on that. But it needs a home, so I think it should be put in the
All right.
transport pot.
Okay. The next one is Volunteer Support Warden Scheme. We're running late now. I got a letter, and you got a copy of it, I think.
Yeah.
Which came back, I think, because we were asked to say whether we could go in on the support support warden scheme. Because it was Mike Hill who was the lead for Kent County Council on it, I wrote a polite letter saying that we couldn't, although we were very interested, we couldn't come up with anyone at the time because it was missing the Outlook deadline and there was no one at Christmas and all the rest of it. So we couldn't make his deadline. But if it was all go, we'd still be interested if we could find someone later in the year. And we got a letter back saying, thank you for letting me know you'd like to take part in the scheme. So that's where we are at the minute. I mean, we're not kind of committed to it because the next thing is recruitment, which we may not be able to do, but at least we...
Yeah, but they're going to contact us to arrange all this.
The intention is to undertake the recruitment campaign until the end of March. And we always said we wouldn't be able to advertise for anyone Because, I mean, basically their communications were a bit confused, excuse the pun, because they originally were saying, can you confirm to us you'll be able to do it and by such and such a deadline, and we said no. Now, we said we couldn't because we couldn't recruit anyone. Now they're saying we're going to recruit later.
So I'd like to invite you along to the launch event, and we will send you details as soon as they are known. So we can look at it again then.
Well, after they've heard David's presentation at the annual meeting, they'll be flocking. They'll be flocking.
Killed in the rush.
Okay.
What's our budget, by the way, for the annual meeting? If we're going to bring them, we need a budget.
The budget
Comes out of the chairman's allowance.
All we ask for donations.
You get
always sell advertising.
You get a bottle of wine and some nibbles.
We get Jenson's to sponsor the evening.
Yeah. Let's get on. British Spring Clean Post. You've already passed that
Hang on.
haven't you, David?
Sorry?
No. Can we go back a bit, please?
Where are we now?
It's not on the agenda. But
Mind reading.
It's hard to go back.
Right.
How far back?
just before what Jeremy's saying now.
Okay.
The Kent, well, I passed this around as well.
You did,
this
yes.
is a prevention thing to go in the Outlook.
Yeah.
So if you're happy for me to say
Yes,
about vehicle crime and to put that through, I just needed.
Got my little email about the stolen trailer.
Oh yes, that's it. Right, yes, this is what we've had. We're coming in a week too late from. This is the poster. Heroes Wanted.
Heroes. Where is that on a deer? Okay.
That's his front lawn.
March 3rd to the 5th. Local events taking place throughout March, it says. So obviously we are taking with. But this came, this is inviting us to take part. But Ashford know that we're taking part.
Confuse people if you send that out.
Yes, I just need, that's just for noting.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
It can be lit up.
Do it in a 30-mile radius.
Working Party reports, caretaker, budget and van. Now, we have a budget here which you've been given when you got here today. This is for the caretaker scheme, which is, in other circumstances, one would say is kind of semi-off balance sheet. It doesn't fall within the precept, except the 4,000 that we pay towards it. So it's done at a different time. It also runs a month late in the financial year because it always started a month late. So it's really from May to April instead of April to March. And you can see there the income, which is always the same every year, it never goes up.
Slight. No, it does. It does. It does change because.
Sorry, the main ones don't go up. The little bits we get from the other councils don't change.
Warehorn have always said.
Well, there's different things here.
Is it? Okay.
I think that's the extra 550 does that, Paul.
So that means we're getting less than we're budgeting for.
No, we got received.
We got more. We got more because we got 500 from Canardington and we got the £50
because they didn't polish it in advance.
But I don't know that.
So she's budgeted then back to the original number because we can't be sure of getting it again. The expenditure is relatively straightforward. We're going to talk about caretaker salary in the private session if we resolve to do that. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. There's always a degree of movable feast about this because it's an operational budget, but the general run of things has been that we always do okay on it. At the bottom you'll see 3 lines which are all essentially building up cash for rainy days, and one of those is the van. We've also had to replace equipment at times and we've got a contingency. The van, we've now been running about 5 years, having started with a van that was about 4 or 5 years old, and we think it's time to replace it. We know. Alf had to get a bit of a hatchet job done on the steering wheel lock the other day, and I think now starts it by hot wiring it or something. It's something in which he's experienced. He does say that someone wants to buy it, presumably someone who's even more experienced in hot
Did we
wiring.
have the conversation last time about whether we could lease a vehicle?
We looked at leasing. Yeah. The trouble with leasing, George, is, I mean, we don't have the same tax situation as a lot of companies do. Yeah. The trouble with leasing is, and there are about 5 different versions of leasing, according to who exactly owns what, to when, and what deals there are, and what penalties there are. The problem, leasing is very nice to manufacturers because they get new vans out and they take them back after 3 years. The trouble is, you've more or less paid for the van after the 3 years, but you don't have it anymore. But the bigger problem is that if, for argument's sake, I'm not saying this will happen, but if, for argument's sake, the caretaker scheme comes to an end after a year, you're stuffed with 2 years worth of paying for a van that you don't need for nothing, whereas at least if you've bought the van, which you can buy second hand for the same sort of price, you've got a van to sell. So this is my experience of these things with leasing. It all sounds a good idea, and oh yeah, the tax is better or whatever, that's in a company, but you lose all flexibility.
It was just that I thought we had that conversation and we're going to make it.
Well, we did. Alf did get some details on leasing. He talked to a leasing company. He got us some quotes, which we've looked at, and they don't look very. So if you really didn't have to worry about the flexibility or loss of flexibility, and if you really wanted a new van because you're going to have it nicely signed written and everything, that's a different matter. Yeah. But this is Alf's van for, banging around the countryside in, and if we can get a 3-year-old one, that's a hell of a sight better than where we are.
We have 6k in the vehicle reserve. That's what we've got. So that's including up to the end of this financial year. Yeah. But we have got 6 too.
So we can pretty much afford
we need to go down.
Yes.
I think we should personally, my personal view is we should get on and replace it. Yeah. Because I don't like the idea of someone.
No, that's our plan. That's our plan. We've got the money. George is saying, weren't we going to look at leasing? Yes, we did. It doesn't make sense.
So I think we take the decision tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Is it on the agenda sufficiently?
Yes.
It's actually caretaker.
Yes, because
well.
we decided as the caretaker, but we needed to bring it to you to say.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's very helpful. I think that's probably all we need to do on caretaker budget and van.
Yes, because
people are happy with the budget. Yeah. I mean, the fact is, we don't have to set our income, and we have to, as far as possible, stay within it, which we have done so far. Yeah. Okay, the monthly transaction statement is the next thing, isn't it? Yes. So let's just have a quick look through that. Replace wheel bearing on van, £200, a bit unfortunate, but there we are, it has to be done. We don't want the wheel to fall off.
Can I ask what gang mowing is?
Gang mowing is when you have the big cylinder mowers, Sorry.
It's a group of volunteers.
It's not a group of shady characters turn up.
It's the tractor with a whole lot of things that stand out.
It's a multiple connected mower.
Yeah,
and it's a cylinder mower.
Yeah. So they do the big area up by Woodland View, and we're doing it behind Jubilee Field. But I've asked for a requote because with that hoarding up and where they're going to do the work, won't need the gang mower. I've said he'll be able to, with the mower he's got, to do the bits that are left. Yeah. So we're just left with a big area. And Alf always does the edging because gang mowing is just sweeping. He does all the rest.
You'll see that we, what was I just looking at? Yes, we replaced the blower, the leaf blower, because the other one was shot. So can I sign these statements? Are people happy with it?
That's good.
You see, we've got quite a bit of cash still in the caretaker.
14th.
Right, good, that's done. Planning, do we have anything to say about planning?
Only the one that you got that's all I've had in.
Oh yes, and what it says that the decisions were received. It didn't say what the decision was.
Oh, sorry, didn't I?
No.
Oh, sorry, granted. Sorry about that.
Okay, good. Highways, Paul?
Nothing particular to add. The roads are actually, there's one or two that have been ported, they're on the system, and hopefully they'll be dealt with, but actually it's holding up reasonably well.
Just the edges are starting to go in places, aren't they now?
I did have a moan the other day because ones up at the stocks, for instance, hadn't been filled, so I got on to Darren, he asked where, and the following day they were done. The gullies, I will check tomorrow after walking. Underhill, Sue Duff reported that, and I'd already had a go about that one, and they went and did those as well. So we're now waiting. I've maintained that it's blocked, so they've emptied, so we're now waiting to see.
The ones they haven't done down here when they did them, the ones outside treetops.
Right.
And the one nearest one to the church, but on the other side of the road.
Okay.
They're still full.
Right.
I just remember, if you're talking to them, if you go along towards Cooper's Corner, outside of Burns Corner Field, that whole gully there is completely, it's all flooded there, it's not draining away, and the actual, I had a look, if it's happened in the last week, then maybe it's happened, but I looked about a week ago, 6 days ago, and the whole of the grid was all completely blocked up.
Okay, I'll check that out.
You know. And I'm just thinking, because that leads down to, you know, when you go down the corner around the bend, when people were mentioning about it was going across, and that's where all ices up.
Yeah.
It's not going to completely remove it, but if they could fix that so it drained away more rapidly, it won't ice up. So
there was. Go on.
Sorry, if you finished that bit, I need to go back to the finance, but you.
Okay. That's on the highways. We just got a warning in the chief executive of NALC's monthly report that just came through. If you noticed it, about potholes, and I did look at that on iPlayer today. In Devon, where they've got it's something we discussed here before. Why was it not possible to do quick and dirty pothole repairs? And it is possible because Devon are doing it. It did look as though it will be very quick, very dirty, and not very long lasting, but it's a way of doing it. Devon is working with the parish council. It does happen to be the vice chairman of NALC who was in that parish, so obviously that's probably why it's come about. Interesting thing was that the local government association top man on highways was on the television as well, and he was hopeless. He was a councillor. He was from East Anglia or something. Anyway, he was hopeless. He spent all his time saying what was hopeless about, saying how it was no use. He said, you can't possibly do that because some of the roads are too fast to go on, to which obviously the answer is, well, you don't do it on the fast roads then, you do it on the little roads like we've done. Oh, it'll only work in the countryside. You can't do it. Oh, he was Buckinghamshire. You can't do it round our way. Well, okay, do it somewhere else. Oh, well, what about if it comes out later and someone gets injured on a bicycle? Well, what about if they got injured on a bicycle before you filled it? I mean, it was also, we don't want to do it. But it does, I just mentioned it because it does bring back the possibility that it's got national notice now that maybe your idea of a few years ago is coming around. And I mean, all it was they've got a big bucket, if you didn't see it, a big bucket with black stuff in it, in a plastic bag. They tip it in and then they use a handheld basher, and apparently they just bash it until it rings nicely, which shows that all the voids have gone.
That'll be the whole film, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
Traditional approach.
Cold tarmac. Okay, you wanted another one on
Yes,
finance.
I just want to go on finance, the rural conference that you're going to go on.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Yes, Calcs.
I've got two conferences coming up. One is the rural conference for Calc, but according to John last night, it might not survive. They haven't got enough people yet.
What, the rural?
Yeah, the rural. It might not survive.
Okay.
It's their first.
Do the speakers.
It's their first. It's their first. It's their first.
Yes.
It's their first go at it, there's the village hall thing, which might be all right, and we do tend to try and sort of support. Now John has gone, sort of keep ourselves in the eye of Calc because we get help with them from them when we need it, and at least they sort of know who we are, and I keep going to them. But if it takes place, then that's another day out of my diary. And there's also the planning conference coming, isn't there? But is that the following month, I think?
Yes, I've only just sent that round.
Yes. The planning conference I said I would go to because Alderton is on, which is the head of planning at Ashford. And I don't know him, it would be an opportunity to get to know him. The one we used to know was made redundant a few years ago. John knows him, but of course that's not the same anymore. Okay, so they both need approving, because we normally approve things like that in advance for the money. Right, good. The planning we've talked about. We're down to public rights of way. I haven't got anything, have you?
Just that the footpath alongside Stafford Farm is still obstructed with the posts holding the fence up. I've had a word with Billy Jo, and she says that they've got the fence posts, and they've kept the posts there because of the wind, just to stop it coming down. But she is onto it. When I reported last time that there was a wire across the stile coming out of Pipersfield, it turns out that has always been there. It's just the bit of wood across the top has come away, so hence the wire seems to be proud. He has covered the wire with a piece of piping, which doesn't really work. As soon as you put your foot on it, it goes around and slips off. But also the stile is at an acute angle, and he says KCC put it in. KCC have got no record of putting it in, and it's certainly not their type because its angle's too great. So Faye at KCC is going to keep an eye on that. I've also told her about the development starting, and that I want to keep an eye on that. She said they're not diverting it or anything or putting a closure on it, so it should be kept open at all times. So I'll keep an eye on that. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Chairman will keep an eye on that.
Keep his foot off it.
Okay, open spaces, David.
So nothing other than on the village green where we had those 2 containers last year.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether the grass there is going to need reseeding or new turf, because
you mean it's receded?
Yeah, it just looks dreadful.
Right. Okay. Well, we could ask Ashford Housing to do that. It's their land, and they did it.
Yeah, they did. They caused it.
Okay. Yep.
It just needs something done.
I did point out, as I may have said to you one time, I did point out to Michelle when she came to a caretaker. That's of Ashford. When she came to a caretaker meeting one time, that it was interesting. I mean, I'm not saying we always follow the rules, but Ashford Housing broke legislation by sticking those containers on the village green, and they didn't even ask our permission as leaseholder. But there we are.
Right.
Obviously the housing got done. Go on.
I just have one thing. Do you remember we agreed to have crocuses put in? And they are now coming up, but I thought it would be nice if we just put a quick thing in the Outlook. Didn't at the time, because it wasn't, they might see them now and know that what they're in aid of. It was for their, like to thank Wittersham Parish Council for their support in planting purple crocuses in aid of the World End Polio campaign. So, I mean, I won't, but this is just to remind me that that's what we just put in.
Brilliant.
On the subject of planting, so lovely that we've got the sign back up by the fountain. I'm just wondering if we could do some planting. I'm quite happy to do it myself.
Okay.
Around the base there, because it just looks it looks good, but it just needs something. It's just weedy.
Sure.
So shall I plant something?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Do you think the Reverend Mainwaring was Reverend Mainwaring or Mannering?
Mannering. Having captain.
Right. Cemetery and churchyard. Anyone got anything on cemetery and churchyard, Sue?
No, I don't think so.
Alan, your special subject?
Well, no, I'm just a man, but nothing I know of.
Right. Okay.
My only comment is that and we were considering this when I was down there and as the restoration, that there are so many missing monuments from the churchyard, and I'm given often good authority that there's a garden path on Swan Street that's created from some of the monuments. So that does in fact leave rather a lot of space.
No.
Not yours.
It had been suggested that alongside with the new cemetery extension that could petition to have the churchyard reopened, so you could have a choice.
Funnily enough, I think that was something that I did mention at some stage, maybe even with the bishop the other week, and whoever, if it was the bishop or whoever it was, maybe it was Judy, the suggestion was that when the churchyard is closed, it really is closed. But maybe you're right that there is a petitioning possible. I don't know.
I mean, it is difficult.
Interesting thought.
Perhaps local dignitaries or whatever could choose to be buried.
Well, you could get a premium rate. Okay, let's move on from that.
Meritocracy for the.
Let's move on from that. So the Calc meeting that I went to in January, that's the Ashford meeting that I go to each 2 months, or usually do. I've missed a couple. You've had a note which we just put out. Key things in that that go with the note since I did it. I've actually think you've actually had the formal minutes since. I didn't know it was going to come out in time. The idea of the district and borough councils joining together in East Kent, and I said Ashford were apparently pulling back. Ashford have now formally said that they're not going to do it unless they get kicked into it by the government. Ashford keeps saying they're the cheapest council tax in Kent, and they don't want to go in with all the expensive ones because they'll all have to merge their rates.
They refuse to go into the health area as well.
All right, okay.
There's a thread there.
The thing about enforcement of gypsy sites or traveller sites or whatever the PC term for them is, we've also got problems with enforcement of Budds Lane. I've been involved in that a few times with Stephen Lewis and earlier with Charlotte Lyon, who works for Charlie Parsons down at Bud's house as his PA on site. There was actually, after help from Mick Burgess on about 3 occasions, there was actually supposed to be an enforcement man going again in the last few days. But basically there's a second shed being sort of started up there now because they didn't do enough the first time. And the one who built the first one is claiming apparently to Ashford that he got approval from someone on the nod or whatever, and he's done nothing wrong, Gov, and etc, etc. Oh, and he also thinks that it's valid to have it because he's going into hobby farming on his little strip. But unfortunately, that's where we are. I mean, they completely sold the pass by having no one there on enforcement who both worked there and wasn't on maternity leave or holiday. And it just made it, the hole got dug deeper and deeper. Charlie Parsons, I'm led to believe, does have some serious London solicitors on it. And we'll hope that eventually Ashford get kicked into doing something, but it's a bit tragic. Wolvenden, number 7, I think this is rather interesting. Wolvenden, as I said, has seen a housing scheme for 40 houses passed by ABC against their wishes. They were willing to take a little bit less than 40, but they wanted more smaller ones. I'm not sure where it is. The interesting thing in my mind is that it's in the AONB, the same as we are, and Ashford have insisted that the housing here can't be on the AONB in large sites. But it's, funnily enough, it's strange the way these things work. It was possible all the time. You can't explain it.
It's something to do with being on a football field rather than on a farm field.
I don't know that that's the case. It's still, the point is, Alan, it's in the AONB. Alan, AONB, we heard many times from Miriam and Mary, you can't have a big site on AONB unless it's exceptional circumstances. Maybe this one's exceptional.
I think the deal may have been that Hull Park were prepared to donate an alternative football field.
Well, that's only part of it. It's still in the AONB.
Yeah, but I mean that may have swung the.
I think it's just that for ordinary people like ourselves, we can't possibly understand the subtleties of these decisions. Right. And I told you about the 800 to 1,000 extra houses, although they're still calculating how many it would be. Charing apparently has got 55 houses in the plan, and they are worried, this may be an exaggeration, but they're worried about being landed with an extra 120. And it's only a small village. It's bigger than here, but it's small. Okay, so that's Calc. Village Hall Management Committee, George.
Yep, I've attended one meeting of the Village Hall Management Committee, and also last Saturday I attended a training day as well. There's only 5 of us on the Village Hall Management Committee, and we are trustees.
That's Mick and Jeanette and
Mick and Jeanette, Marshall, Rita, Everett, and Howard Oliver.
And you.
And myself. So that's all the people that are on it. We have got a problem at the moment, is that due to the rapid or unexpected resignation of the previous chair, we've only got one signatory for the checks. So it's very difficult at the moment to do business. So they're in the process of trying to sort that out. Right. Mick and Jeanette are also in the process of moving.
Indeed, and I heard their house has already got a buyer.
Yeah, potentially. So I think it's quite difficult times. I mean, the committee itself should be bigger anyway, because every user group should have a representative. Not the commercial ones, obviously, but the volunteer groups. So it's getting people to do that. So I think that's something we need to sort of work on. Volunteers again. But one of the things that, some of the things that came out of the training day was that there were quite a few bits of paper that we don't have that we should have, for example, for the village hall, and processes that should be in place that aren't in place. So I think that's going to be quite a challenge for me.
So you've actually got an opportunity to improve the governance as everything. I mean, in a way, changing the guard is a handy time. It's the same as you'll probably be fed up already, but there are some things that have come along with me here that could have been done before, you know, like one or two policies and things. It's just an opportunity to rethink one or two things.
But one of the things that was talked about on the training day was the fact that lots of village halls now are going over to a company limited liability, whereas at the moment there's unlimited liability for the trustees on the village hall management committee. So that's something that APA are willing to...
Well, the trustees are unlimited. Have you got trustees insurance or something?
Well, yes, you can have trustees insurance. We don't know if we've got it. That's one of the issues that we don't know. There's lots of things we don't know if we've got or haven't got.
Do you know who your insurers are?
No. I don't personally.
I thought you were through Cambridge.
It is Cambridge, is it?
I don't know. Anyway, but there's lots of things we need to find out about. But I mean, the general feeling about the insurance was if you're acting within the law and reasonably, then you don't need insurance. If you're acting outside the law and unreasonably, the insurance won't cover you anyway. So
one thing you ought to know then on the insurance side, because obviously this is an area you want to get a hold of, and Yvonne has a lot of experience of this. Cayman Company are a broker who do parish councils, and they're very helpful.
I think that's where the village hall are.
Yeah. So in other words, if you ring them up, if you can't find your papers, they will have them, I imagine, and they will say, you've got this, you haven't got that, you could have this for extra £50 or whatever. They will be quite user friendly.
Can I just raise a couple points? There's two types of insurance that you can use, obviously trustee indemnity and public liability. So for example, at the moment there's a tile fallen out from the roof, falls down there, what have you. The other thing, of course, is I fully understand the point about getting people to operate it, but looking through the most recent governing document, because I was concerned about what liability the parish council had, and we're a custodian trustee of parish councils, and that brings with it. If you look on the Charities Commission, the only trustee registered there at the moment is the parish council, no individual names, and none of your current management committee are registered as trustees.
No, I know that's something else we've discovered, that no one's registered.
The other thing is that the committee should be 11 people, 3 of which are elected at the AGM, and then 8 are representatives from major organisations. Half those organisations are defunct. Luckily the parish council isn't, so you're the representative on that. And not for tonight, but I do think that the document needs to be brought up to date.
Yeah, well, we're looking at something else that came out of the meeting.
Yeah, and the question is to what extent the parish council can help on that. There is a responsibility of the parish council which is detailed in there. You also have the opportunity of co-opting people if you could ever find them. But the most important thing I think at the moment is that you but when the marches go, you'll only. I presume that Howard and Rita were elected.
Yeah.
They're not representing.
No, they're elected.
So you've got 2 elected at the last AGM, so and then 1 representative. But the fact is that's potentially a big burden from a liability point of view.
Well, you only court if everyone turns up.
No, you know the court. It's quite. You see, again, the document is terribly out of date.
I think 3 people.
The court is something like 1/3 or 2/3 of the membership. If you
with the minimum.
3,
with the minimum.
No, there's no minimum mentioned there. I mean,
but the issue is more on a practical basis that when Mick and Jeanette go, Mick and Jeanette are the people that are running it at the moment. Mick's over here 3 times a day doing the heating and everything. When they go, we'll have no one to open it and close it.
And I think that's a good example of the bigger issue. Talking about volunteering, because most people, if you stop and spoke, would think that A, the parish council are responsible for the village hall, and B, the government, whoever they are, own it, run it, and what have you, and fund it. There's a whole feeling that people don't realise it's a voluntary driven thing. So when we talk about potentially, not just at the AGM, but there's an opportunity, we need to remind people of the facilities there, because you could get down to a stage where there's just you left, and we might have to lock it. In which case you lose the commercial customers. It's really difficult to get them back again. So we're not quite at 2 minutes to midnight on the village hall, but I think we need to be aware that some support, needs to be given to you. I think from the parish council as our representative, but also as custodian trustees. If it folded, what would happen? Would it revert back to the parish? Is the parish council as custodian trustee ultimately?
I mean, I'm willing. I know I said when I was first volunteered to be the rep, I said I didn't want to do it sort of for a long time. I'm quite happy to carry on doing it anyway, if that's what you want me to do, because I feel there's a bit of a challenge there that I could get my teeth into and try and sort it out. But it's dependent on recruiting other people, obviously. That's the thing.
What's reassuring is that it's terribly difficult to get a slot. If you want to book the parish council,
I think the spot
which is rather good. And that's very good.
Because I was looking at the calendar. There's nothing on the calendar.
Well, there's lots of things. There's no one to do them. That's why they don't get done. Okay. So things like that.
Okay. Well, keep it up, George. It's a bit more of a baptism of fire or whatever than was expected.
Hopefully
with Nigel going, but.
It's an option.
Okay. So date of next planning meeting, we don't expect one. Date of next full council meeting is a month tonight, 4 weeks tonight. Items for information.
One thing I just wanted to say predominantly to Alan and Colin, please let me know when you're away, even if it's only for a few days, because if I'm sending planning stuff round, it'll be sitting on your doormat, so it's important that I know. So just let me know, please.
And you only have the letterbox in the house. You don't have a sort of one at the driveway. One has to walk all the way down.
Tight on his brick.
because apparently, if we get another bread bin.
Okay.
Chair, can I just ask something as well?
Go on, please.
I think I emailed you. You spoke some time ago about the fact you were intending to meet with Mr. Mallet to introduce yourself as chair.
I haven't got anything.
And I emailed you and asked you if I could accompany you as the vice chair for the same reason.
I haven't got anything on it.
Just to remind you.
I haven't got anything on it. But when John met him, it was on his own, and I assumed that I would meet him just as the chairman, and I'll report back.
Okay. But I could also meet him as village hall committee as well. So it was another. We could kill two birds with one stone if that was.
I don't know where the village hall comes into it. I was actually, as you know, in the paper last month. I was going to meet him because of the fact that that John had met him before in terms of the potential bequest of the sports club freehold. That's actually what the meeting is about. It's not about the village hall.
I think you just need to get him and do it.
Well, I can't. I'm waiting for him to come here.
I know.
Yes, but that's all. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, can we resolve by the nature of the sensitivity of the next items to exclude the public? That will be the cemetery extension and the caretaker's salary. Can I have a proposer for that?
Yeah,
David, and the second one was Paul. Colin. Okay, thank you. Does everyone agree?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, thank you very much for the long-standing attendance from the public seats. Thank you, Alf. Thank you, Miriam.